across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, just gone 4 o'clock. We're live across the UK on
defence of murder, it requires you to have malice aforethought, yes. You know, that you've actually planned, thought about what you're doing. As Sergeant Blake had a split second to make a decision, and as you've seen, a car is more deadly sometimes than a gun. And I just think the public will see this once again as the police being under attack when the police get rightly criticised about things, about not failing enough, not solving enough crime, not being on patrol enough. But here we are, dedicated officers who were keeping Londoners safe.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome. Can I just say that was the shortest programme I've ever done in the history of my life. I'm not going to point the finger, but for some reason, and it happens on Drive Time every day, we came out of the news to say a very good afternoon and we went straight to the break at 4:20. I'd like to announce that it wasn't a malfunction, but I will not point the finger at Amy. It's not fair. Brilliant. Love it. Welcome to the show. Thank you to Ian Collins. This is Jeremy Cullen Drive, the home of common sense and free speech. And I should say a very good afternoon straight away to my gorgeous, wonderfully talented daughter, Ava Kyle, who is studying at Leicester. No, she's not. She's in York. Why did I say Leicester? It's all gone to rubbish again. Aves is watching. How are you, sweetheart? Good to have you. And listen, for the rest of you, there's so much to talk about. As ever, let's nail it from day one. 0344 499 1000. Harry Potter is answering your calls today. Jody, not here. What's his real name? James? Just when you ring him, 0344 499 1000, go, Harry Potter, I presume. Because he looks like Harry Potter. You can send a WhatsApp. You can do that on your WhatsApp thing, because that's why it's a WhatsApp. Send a voice note to Ryan, 0344 499 1000, or you can send an email, or text rather. We're not going to let Amy near them, because she'll probably delete them. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. A very good afternoon. Oh, Steve Millings in Belfast. Jesse, you made me laugh out loud. Just removed the lid off a Frey Bentos steak and kidney pie. It says best before 2019. It'll be in Belfast, General, in a heartbeat. What are we going to talk about? There's so much in the news. We're going to trawl through it. And you know what? Going to get my first guest on straight away. I am always delighted to have a class, clarity and brilliance. That's what's said about her. Poppy Coburn, assistant comment editor of The Telegraph. A very good afternoon to you. How are you?
Good afternoon to you too.
Are you in that
you
room?
You always flatter me.
Well, it's true. And you're in that room where I always feel like you're sort of... It seems like a detaining room at the sort of... well, I was going to say it looks like a border immigration control detainment room, but we don't have any of them, do we? You go straight through.
I was going to say, if I was at a border control room, I could just walk straight out. I'm at work. I actually can't leave.
Good to have you on. Thank you so much. Are you enjoying the sunshine or just stuck inside like the rest of us?
Oh, I'm very red in the face, so you can tell I enjoyed it too much at the weekend.
You're a journalist. Don't give me you have to sit in the office. We know what goes on. A couple of serious things today, a couple of angry-based things as well. We'll start with this extraordinary story. The armed Scotland Yard officer who was cleared of murdering a violent gangster. Can we underline that? Chris Cabra, a violent gangster in South London, now finds out, having gone through that trauma, that he faces a gross misconduct disciplinary hearing over the shooting and could be sacked. Now, Sergeant Martin Blake shot dead Chris Cabra in Streatham in September 22 after he drove at officers in an attempt to smash his way out of a road police block. The highly trained firearms specialist has been told he must appear before a hearing accused of misconduct. I just put this to you, right, Poppy, because we seem to be now living in this parallel universe where we make excuses for anybody who perpetrates terrible crime. And yet for people trying to do their best, even if they make mistakes, we continue to act. We seem to go for the victim in more instances than not. This is absolutely outrageous, isn't it?
And also, how is this saga still going on? Because when Chris Cabra was first killed, there was this massive uproar from activists who were saying it's police brutality, completely unjust. Well, then it comes out that the man was a career criminal. He shot a loaded gun in a nightclub in southeast London, a very, very dangerous man. He drove his car into a group of police officers. Martin Cattle thought he was going to kill them, shot him. Unfortunately, he lost his life. Went through the disciplinary procedure, was cleared because he did nothing wrong in a criminal procedure. He did nothing wrong. He acted completely lawfully. And now he's being dragged through this yet again to the IOPC, which is an utterly ridiculous body that does this sort of thing all the time. It's not the first instance where an officer has been cleared in a criminal case and then has been dragged in front of the standards body.
And it really makes you, if you're me, it makes you want to say to the OPC and all these people, right? I just got to go, the bosses of you know, police forces, the length and breadth of this country. Why don't you get your heads out of your backsides and give support to the men and the women on the street who are trying to deal with crime? Listen, I remember the uproar, and of course, initially you wonder what the facts are, but Martin Blake was doing his job. What will happen is, why would anybody want to join the firearms unit of any police force in the future if you're so terrified to carry out your job because, you know, you'll be the one who ends up being dragged through every single court in the land? This guy was a career criminal. If he'd driven that car and murdered 3 policemen by running them over, this would be completely different. He prevented that, Martin Blake, didn't he?
Well, you can also see how we treat police officers in this country. I mean, there was a story in the paper today about there was a man who punched 2 female police officers in the head. One seriously punched her where she laid on the ground. He didn't even get a sentence for it. The judge said if you do it again, you'll get 14 weeks. 14 weeks for punching a female police officer in the head. But why does anyone join the service?
Hurty words can get you 31 months if you write something that people don't like. This world has gone nuts. I'll bring you to your favourite subject because I know this will send you into the roof. Yesterday, very interestingly, Sir Tony Blair, the man that took us to an illegal war, who still believes that he's relevant, I found myself cheering him on Drive Time, because here's a man who finally stood up and said to Keir Starmer, by the way, your net zero thing is going to cost too much money, bankrupt this country and isn't going to work, and people know that. You need to rethink it. I had an ex-Labour advisor, Matthew Talbot, on the show, and he said, this is really interesting. There's no doubt that Labour are going to start rowing back from this ridiculous net zero madness. And Blair getting involved will give Starmer the opportunity to sack, this is what he said, Ed Miliband this summer. Today, it appears Tony Blair has sort of backed down a little bit. He's claimed Sir Keir Starmer's approach to net zero is the right one, a day after he sort of appeared to say it was crap. Thoughts, Poppy Coburn?
Well, isn't it funny? Because there's clearly someone in government that's more hated than Keir Starmer, and that's got to be Ed Miliband. I mean, all the knives are out for him today. First, it was Rachel Reeves who was taking the kicking on behalf of the Prime Minister, and now it's the Energy Secretary. But what I'll point out, I think Blair's right. I don't say that very often. He's completely right about net zero. But also, all the people in the Labour government were letting Ed Miliband do his thing. We just saw these massive blackouts in Spain and Portugal. That's the future of the UK if we let Ed Miliband carry on.
That's
So
the truth, by the way.
I'm
I'm so with you. If you look at that Spain and Portugal outage, that is about renewables. And I say this to my kids. They look at me like I've landed from Mars. There will be blackouts this summer. There will be outages. That is, you're not allowed to say blackouts, by the way. I was told today. I genuinely mean this. I was told to say outages. So there will be outages of electricity, apparently, because we've got this madness. But surely, you know, I saw an interview with Miliband this week where he was saying, you know, a majority, and mine doesn't sound like Starmer, but he said they all sound the same. A majority of people in this country support net zero. They don't, Poppy, do they? They don't.
Oh, okay. If you describe net zero as I'm going to give you £10,000 every month to put in your pocket and everything's going to be rosy, yeah, but you can say that about anything. Yeah. I mean, if you tell people, do you want more expensive energy that's less reliable, which is what net zero actually is, they'll go, no, I don't want that at all. But if you say, do you want to save the planet, then obviously they're going to say yes. It's about how you phrase the question.
I think he will be, I agree with Matthew Talbot, I think that he will be slowly ousted this summer. I think he'll be given a knighthood or a lordship or whatever and will disappear. And I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because net zero was the altar on which Keir Starmer was praying. I don't think it works. And I think if you look at his Chancellor, Matthew said this as well, already been told by the IMF she's got no wiggle room. She's in trouble as well. It's only been 10 months. It's an absolute disaster.
It reminds me of a Conservative government, funnily enough. They're already running out of people.
It's very interesting. I also wanted to talk to you about something else, which is another thing. On the back of that story about the police officer now facing a charge, violence has erupted again at the jail in Manchester, where arena terrorist Hassam Abidi stabbed and scalded guards. Up to 8 lags, said to be mainly Muslims, we're just reading this, used weights to attack other inmates in a gym at HMP Franklin. Staff quelled the violence and the Category A prison in County Durham was put into lockdown. The prison service admitting today, we are braced for further Islamic-inspired attacks in prisons this summer after the assault in Manchester. There is real concern, said a senior source, that extremists would seek to exploit overcrowding and wind prisoners up. Thoughts on that, Poppy?
Well, another thing, you can't get police officers and you certainly cannot get prison officers. It's almost impossible to recruit people to do the job. And can you blame them? Because that was a horrific case where the Manchester bomber was basically involved in this horrific attack. I mean, he was given access, as you say, to boiling water. We gave a terrorist access to boiling water. But that's the reality of these prisons. These Islamist gangs run the place. I mean, seriously, if you talk to a prison officer off the record, they will tell you the reality is that we don't have enough staff. The staff we do have, they're not paid well enough, or they're not properly trained. The amount of churn is unbelievable. People come in and out of the job for a couple of months, so they've got no expertise. We lose all the good people. These gangs play us like fools. They run the place. They're way more in charge than the government is.
And I mean, when you sit and you listen to that, and I'm not open-mouthed anymore, Islamic gangs are running our prisons. The police are not able to do their jobs because their woke bosses want to pull them up in front of whatever, despite the fact they were protecting themselves. We've got a government obsessed with net zero. We seem to attack victims rather than perpetrators of crime. I don't want to make it the same thing every single day. But what the hell is happening to this country? What is happening to the value of this country? What happens to how this country used to believe in itself and behave properly? What do you expect everyday people to think now, Poppy?
Also, I mean, here's a Labour perspective. Why are we looking out for workers? These are people just trying to do their job. I mean, who is backing these people who put their lives on the line every day? You're dealing with dangerous criminals. You're dealing, in the case of Chris Carver, a man who shot a gun in a nightclub. This is a dangerous, unstable man. You're expected to put your life on the line for, let's be frank, not a very good salary. It's not a very good salary, let's be totally honest. You've got a decent pension if you make it that far, but you're not going to be backed by the unions. You're not going to be backed by your bosses, certainly not. And you're certainly not going to be backed by the government either. Why would you bother? Why would you bother turning up every day?
Do you feel like, sorry, you're much younger than me, do you feel like the very fabric of this country is on its arse?
I think if things don't get better in the next 5 years, we're in a really dangerous situation. That's what I honestly think. I think, look, I hope reform are going to be the future. I hope they can sort everything out. I hope there'll be a breath of fresh air. But if they're not, I'd be worried. I'm thinking about looking elsewhere.
I couldn't, I mean, that's what worries me. We had this extraordinary story earlier in the week. I mean, it becomes a joke. I mean, Mike does an amazing feature on his breakfast show about Migrant of the Week. We had that dreadful story about chicken nuggets this week. An Iranian sex toy smuggler, I'm not even being rude, was allowed to stay here because he was able to argue to a British court, oh, by the way, in Iran, my business is illegal, so I have to stay here, otherwise my family... And we're laughing at it, but I don't know. We put in prison Lucy Connolly for 2.5 years for writing something that people are offended by. Our prisons are not being controlled. Our police forces are not. There's not enough of them. It's just like the very fabric of what we are is being broken down on a daily basis, in my humble opinion.
But here's the problem. Politicians will nod along to this. They'll say, yeah, I completely agree. It's absolutely disgraceful this is all happening. They'll nod along to you like they're commentators. And then you go, are you going to introduce legislation? Are you going to do anything about it with the power that you've been given? Oh, no, you're not. So you're going to make a tweet about it, you maybe make a statement, but nothing ever changes. And until there are consequences for politicians, when they get in power, you need to do this. You need to do this in this time frame. And if you don't, we will hold you accountable to it.
This
Until
is
there
interesting.
is that accountability, nothing changes.
This is interesting. Graham said, read this to Poppy. Why is the photo shown on TV of Chris Cabot showing him with a nice smiley face? That's not really who he was. It's like the photo of the Southport killer being the sweet boy in his school uniform. The media need to get this right. That's a very interesting point, actually, talking about Chris Cabot. Let's talk about the madness that is Great Britain, though. Keep your calls coming, my friends. Poppy Coburn with me on Talk Drive, 0344 499 1000. Right, Poppy, this is ludicrous. This is two of today's ludicrous stories. A train company has been accused of virtue signalling nonsense after repainting one of its trains in a diversity-themed livery. The Avanti West Coast train has been painted in bold artwork celebrating the ethnicity of the company's workforce and the communities it serves. But Gareth Bacon, the shadow... is he really the shadow transport secretary? Described the move as a virtue signalling nonsense and claimed passengers deserve better than this farce. Could I respectfully suggest, unless I'm missing the point, would love to hear from you, I want my trains to arrive on time. I don't bloody care about painting them. What a load of old... That's another example, isn't it?
I saw someone put on social media, Avanti woke coast instead of West Coast. By the way, this is the train line that has the most delays in the country.
Yes.
I mean, you literally can't make it up.
I mean, that, it's a
vibrant
vibrant train design. Sorry, none of our trains are vibrant in when they turn up because they're always late. And the other thing is...
No.
Go on.
No, it makes you feel better when you spend, £200 on a single ticket that's late, but at least there's a nice paint job on the front of the train. It's 4 hours late. That means you miss your granddaughter's,
I love the fact. I thought it was only me. I thought it was only me that was cynical, but you are as well. And also, I'm going to set a question for today because this next story, Poppy Coburn, is right up our street. A man has been told by his landlord his fish tank, which is only 2 feet deep, is a serious health and safety risk. Stephen Sharp installed the 6-foot by 4-foot outdoor tank in his front garden in Carlisle in Cambria to house goldfish, but his landlord said the water feature posed health and safety risks to his neighbours and told him to remove it. Mr Sharp, a father, once he'd taken safety into account by covering the tank with a bleeding lid. And he's been thrown out of the house. I have to ask people, what's the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? You must have heard of some barking ones, didn't you?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked because I've got a favourite one. You know that all new builds in the UK have to have a little bar outside the window in case someone falls out of them. And the reason for it isn't to look after kids, even though that's silly enough as it is. It's because of climate change. They think that we're all going to be opening our windows because of the hot weather. So they've had to put a bar in front of every new build window. That is my favourite health and safety story. Seriously, it's true. If you go past a new build estate, keep an eye out for the bars.
Just repeat that. There's a bar on new build windows on housing estates because of what?
Oh, well, in case people open their window because of climate change and they might fall out and, break their arm or something along those lines. So the government has done a really important plan and scheme where they've told every developer you've got to have a little safety bar on the window. So you now can't open a new build window properly. So when you do have a hot day like today, unlucky.
Honest to God, I give the hell up. Poppy Coburn, thank you. I know how difficult it is to get the room and spend your time, but thank you so much, Steve. The amazing Poppy Coburn, assistant comment editor at The Telegraph. You didn't expect that, Ryan, did you? What is the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? She has just told us, Poppy Coburn, on new builds, the government has said to developers, put a bar outside the window. It's not in case a kid falls out. It's apparently because of climate change and what you could release into the environment. I give the hell up. 0344 499 1000. Now, Amy is supposed to go to an ad break at this point, right? She's already been to one that she wasn't supposed to. You're going to another one, right? We're going to get this right? OK, so, Amy, get your finger ready. That didn't sound right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Wait till 6:30 tomorrow morning or 6 o'clock because he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, the legend that is Michael Graham.
Very good afternoon to you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Well, it's all gone a bit wrong because we started at 4 o'clock and Amy pushed an advert break whilst we were... Well, I was saying hello.
Yeah, it was an accident, apparently.
Oh, you are winding me up. There's something wrong with your mic now. I don't understand. This happens only... this happens only on drive time.
It's definitely plugged in.
Don't worry, it's not your fault. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, just honestly, I don't have an ego, actually, whatever people say. So I don't... Just come in, walk in front of the camera, don't give a toss. Just don't worry about it. Just don't fret. It is life. It is live radio, live television. I've done enough. Watch your head on the camera. 0344 499 1000. We've come up with one of Ryan's questions of the day. What is the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? I'll tell you mine. I used to do a show called The Jeremy Kyle Show. People used to queue from early on Thursday morning to be in the audience. There used to be 1,000 people. At one point, the Health and Safety Department of the then television station announced that people could no longer queue because they might slip over if it was icy. This is brilliant. This is trying to...
I don't know what's going on here. I've got a mic that doesn't seem to have a mic on it, but he tells me there is a mic on it.
Right, OK, fair enough. Good. Welcome. We've got... Somebody's written fishy rules. I've got... Oh, that's because that's that. Yeah, it's really professional, this, isn't it?
Is that good?
Anyway, is that working? Can we hear him?
I don't know yet.
Oh, 3...
I'll tell you.
Oh, I give up. 0344. I don't know. Can you hear that? Thank you very much indeed. Michael Graham, how are you?
Good afternoon.
Weirdest and most ridiculous health and safety warning ever heard. I was just saying, the Jeremy Kyle Show, they used to queue around the block on a Thursday morning, come rain or shine, and two lovely old girls, dears, would take hot coffee and hot tea to the people to make sure they were all right in the winter months in Manchester. That ended because health and safety at ITV said, and I quote, the ladies could slip over and break their ankles.
Oh, my God.
So let's just leave the people to freeze then.
Yes. Well, one of my favourite ones happened actually last winter, and it was the railway drivers, the train drivers,
Yes.
who were already in all sorts of disputes with the management. But on one particular occasion, it was snowing,
Yes.
and I think it was at Lime Street Station, and the front end of the train was beyond sort of the covering of the station platform.
Yes.
So the front end of the train had sort of snow on the platform, and the drivers were told by their union that they should not enter the area where the snow was because they could slip over. So the trains didn't leave. What they didn't say to them was, why don't you get on the train where it's undercover
And then
just
walk down
through the train to the drivers? No, didn't do that. No, they just waited in the tea room because the people who were waiting for trains couldn't get a train that morning.
Ladies and
because of the
gentlemen, placate me this afternoon after the problems, technically, that we seem to have every day. What is the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? 87222. Start your message with the word talk and keep the calls coming. We'll get you on. Mike, just very quickly, this Chris Cabba, I mean, was a murdering gangster, okay?
Yep.
They released initially media footage about him, innocent smiling. Turns out he's a gangster.
Picture, the video alone, when you see the video of what was going on that night when he was shot dead, I mean, it's terrifying.
And Martin Blake, a trained firearms officer, said and was proven in a court of law to be telling the truth that he drove at speed towards them. He feared for his and other colleagues' lives. He opened fire. Sadly, nobody wants to see this, but Chris Cabba died.
Yeah.
He was cleared in the court. Now the OPC, the Office for Police Misconduct or Conduct, are instigating an investigation into this poor man. Why would anybody want to be in the police? Why would anybody want to try and protect us?
I know. It's absolute madness, isn't it? He's been cleared by a court of law from deliberately shooting somebody and killing them. So therefore, that's what the law says. So how in any world is a man who is qualified to have a firearm in the police somehow facing a misconduct charge for firing it?
And also,
that's his job.
And he faced let's just be honest, he faced a murder charge, right? He had to go through all of that. Proven innocent. Why would anybody want to do the job?
I know, you just wouldn't, because apart from the fact that you're putting your life at risk, because people in the gang world now are getting more and more ruthless and more violent, and there's more guns on the streets in London now probably than ever before. And this guy, as I say, I mean, you can't overestimate how much this affected people when they saw the video, because until the moment that you saw the video in court, that had been withheld. Nobody'd seen it.
But this is exactly. Can I just say this, because it is very relevant, and somebody just sent me a text. This is like the photo that was released of the Southport killer, angelic schoolboy. It was like that video that this station and Reform got right on when those Muslim men attacked those police officers. All we saw was the kicking. We didn't see the other stuff. And if you release only certain stuff, nobody wants to see anybody killed in that way. But Chris Cabba had killed people and was driving at police officers.
And also the car in question that he was sitting in had been linked to a previous shooting the previous day. So he was, a potentially dangerous murderous suspect who was driving his car backwards and forwards, ramming police cars, trying to get away. Now, that's not the behaviour of a rational individual who has got nothing to be afraid of by just stepping out of the car and holding his hands up.
Completely agree.
He wouldn't have got shot.
What do you make of that, my friends? 0344 499 1000. And to prove that we go yin-yang, black to white, can we say that on this show?
You can.
We're going back to my question today. What is the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? Jade, on a voice note. Amy, push the button now.
I was once admitted to hospital. I needed ice to take down swelling, but the ward that I was on had banned ice. So I kid you not, the ward nurse got a rubber glove, filled it full of water, and it being January, she hung it out the window and told me to snap the fingers off when I need it.
Sorry, ice was banned?
How do you ban ice? You can't ban it.
How did you ban ice?
Ice is banned.
Please make my afternoon,
This
because
is going to be great.
I need. What is the
great.
most ridiculous health and safety argument risk ever? 87222. Nathan Watkins says, Jez, I feel like anything can happen on drive time. Are Ant and Dec up to something?
Well,
because every day something seems to go wrong.
Well, they suggest that you're doing it deliberately. I'll tell you one of the funniest things that I remember happening. It was all during COVID, when there was all these health and safety rulings and signs that went up.
You can't sit there.
Somebody sent me one in, and it was from a GP surgery somewhere near Rugby, I think it was. And the sign on the outside door of the GP surgery said, "Please do not enter if you are unwell." It's a doctor's surgery.
Yeah. Please don't answer if you're unwell. Rob's on a boat in Thameside. He says the weirdest sign on a pavement in a market centre. He said, sorry, this sign should not be here. It's a health risk. I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah.
87222. Ryan, let's get to it. It's got to be a meeting. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Honestly, we have to do the light-hearted stuff because otherwise we go nuts.
It's a bit depressing, isn't
Let's
it?
go back to the serious stuff. Violence has erupted again at the jail where the Manchester terrorist Abidi was kept. He attacked 3 prison officers a few weeks ago. This time up to 8 lags, claiming to be Muslims, that's what we're saying, used weights to attack other inmates. It's under control. But this has resulted in the prison service admitting today, Mikey, that they are braced for further Islamist-inspired attacks in prison this summer. Apparently they're taking over the prisons. That's not me being racist, that's reading a report that I have been given.
Yes, and Robert Jenrick has been very strong on this. He was the one that wrote about this some weeks ago to say that this is a real problem in our prisons, not in every one, but in an awful lot of them. And I was talking to Vanessa Frake, who you know is the former prison governor, yesterday, and do you know what she said? She said one of the problems for the prison officers is they have no protection and they're not allowed to wear stab vests. And you know why they're not allowed to wear stab vests?
No.
Because it might be seen as a bit too confrontational for the inmates. Right?
For God's
sake,
sake,
seriously. So they're in.
Just let them be stabbed then.
So
what
they're
the hell?
risking their lives, risking the possibly one of these.
I thought you were going to
maniacs.
say it was a health and safety issue.
No, it's apparently they don't want to antagonise the inmates. Sorry, they're already throwing oil over them and hitting them with barbells, for heaven's sake. I mean, they're already antagonised by being there.
I'd love to know what people think of it, because you can be accused if you do stuff like this where people will go, oh, that's a bit outrageous, but that is absolutely happening. So we've got the police, the prison service saying there will be more uprisings this summer. Then we've got the uprisings that happen seemingly on the streets. We've got all that's going to happen. I said to Poppy, I say to you, I know we do this every day. Do you get to a point where you think, where is this going to end? Because the very fabric of this country seems to be on its backside.
I mean, I'm now very surprised when I have a day or I go somewhere, and I have actually had it recently in different bits of London, where you suddenly are walking down the street and you think, actually, it's really nice. Yeah. It's really lovely. And the good weather. I was walking, it tends to be nice parts of London. I was walking through Berkeley Square the other day. Yeah. You know, sun was shining, people were sitting in the park, there was a guy exercising. It seemed lovely, right? But of course, you know that within seconds, and this is what New York was like in the 80s, within seconds anything can happen.
Well, it's really weird because I came into London yesterday and I got dropped at Clapham Common tube station to come into London Bridge. Exactly the same. Sun was out, people were in the park, kids were running around. And then you stop and you go, this is the knife capital, the knife-stabbing crime capital of the world almost.
And you're kind of surprised when you feel that it's quite pleasant and nice and not threatening, and there's no, maniacs driving at 40 miles an hour on an electric bike past you trying to nick stuff. I mean, there's a story this morning from Jensen Button's family. His wife apparently had a suitcase stolen outside of St Pancras Station when they were trying to load it into the car, and she's now declared Britain to be unsafe. So, and
actually, I'm not even surprised, because actually, at the end of the day, is it safe anymore?
Well, I was talking to my daughter the other day, who's out in Dubai, and she said a lot of those locals now who would come to London for the summer because it's so hot in Dubai are now going to Paris. And one of the things they say is because London is too dangerous for them, and they're not allowed to have armed bodyguards, and they don't like the fact that somebody might nick their Rolex. So they're going to Paris.
Where does it end? Did she mention me?
She did.
Yeah.
I can't say what she said.
I love Emma. What do you make of it? 0344 499 1000. He's absolutely right. Prison violence, crime on the streets. We're not being miserable. We're being completely honest. Oh, back to it. This is interesting. You'll love this. From light to shade. That's the only way I can do the show. Kenny from Edinburgh. Jez, I've decided to give you a new name. From now on, you'll be called Betty Kyle, the moaning old lady on the telly who's approaching 60. Could you please try and chill out, Betty? You're going to burst a blood vessel.
Oh, I think you're pretty cheerful, to be honest.
Do you remember Buster Blood Vessel from Bad Manners?
Yeah, I think I interviewed him once.
Did you?
Yeah.
Why?
They came to play Bath Pavilion when I was in my early years as a music journalist. I always wanted to be a music journalist.
Were you?
Yeah, and I wanted to work for the NME until I met a guy called Charles Shah Murray. Who was one of their sort of top writers. It was in the days when, all of that, it was very cool to work for the NME, New Musical Express. Julie Burchill was there.
Yeah, the excellent Julie Burchill.
And her boyfriend who's written books and everything like that. Mr. Burchill. And I met him, and he was such a wally. For want of a better word.
Very good on Drivetime.
Yeah, and he was wearing a pair of sort of what looked like leggings with sort of gaffer tape around the knees. And he was very condescending to me as well. He was one of these guys that thought he was Mr. Cool,
Yeah.
And I'm going, this is, mate, it's not, you know, the Cure we're talking about here. It's bust a blood vessel.
Yeah.
Right? So I would chill out if I
Right, well, I'm never going to do the can-can again. It used to be my party piece when I was doing... And do you know how I used to finish doing my little DJ set when I was a local radio DJ? You start the car, I'll start the song. I remember believing that I knew an awful lot about music when I started out, and I was on a radio station. I think it was BRMB in Birmingham. Yeah. And the boss called me in after about 6 weeks, and he said, you are essentially and technically the worst music jock in the world. I said, why? He said, you did the dance show on Friday night, and you played Mike and the Mechanics and the Living Years. And I went, yes, that played in the club I went to. Yes. Stephen Doncaster says, not so much a health and safety message, but just a mad message. It's a train announcement the other day in London. At London Bridge, he said, the 1627, I'm afraid, is delayed by 8 minutes due to a delay. Andy is in a very sunny Brighton. My electrical apprentice finished college and said he was hungry, but he was not health and safety trained to use either the microwave or the kettle at college, so he wasn't allowed to use them.
Oh, for God's sake.
Honestly, is that right? That's ridiculous. Crazy health and safety. Michael Portillo on TV wearing one of usual bright multicoloured suits was asked to wear a high-vis vest on site for a health and safety thing. Yeah. That's true.
That is mad, isn't it? You have to put a high-vis vest on for everything now, no matter what you're doing.
They're everywhere. David, health and safety, go.
I was on a bus once, and it said on a sign, don't stand up when the bus is moving. So it came to the bus stop. I pressed the bell, pulled up at the bus stop. So I got up, walked down, and because the driver saw no one getting off, he moved off again. So I got to the driver and said, can you stop the bus? I wanted that stop. And he said, no, I can't stop the bus. I can only stop at bus stops. And can you please sit down? The bus is moving. I thought, I could be trapped on this bus for an eternity. Ringing the bell, walking down, him moving off.
It's true, isn't it?
It is.
You know when you just get stuff, because we could sit here all day and talk.
It's that
this
common
is fantastic.
sense thing again, isn't it?
Pete's in Sussex. Pete, you're on. Mike Graham's here. What you got? What's your story? Pete?
Oh, sorry. I was miles away there.
Right, Pete, do me a favour. Stop. There's been enough technical crap on this show. We're going to do that again so it looks professional. Pete's in Sussex. Hello, Pete.
How are you?
Not too bad. Say hello to Mike Graham. The legend is here.
I'll be very quick. I was driving through Wokingham a couple of weeks ago, and it was stopped, temporary road closure, and there was a building site with a massive green sign saying, this company is a net zero company, and there was given all the reasons why, the fuel and everything. Yeah. And no electric power tools will be allowed on this site. Only battery. What? But they had two massive generators next to the site hut where you charge your battery jewels.
So he's driving past a massive building site, and there's a big sign saying we are net zero, we don't use electricity, and right behind it's two bloody great generators to power everything that does. Thank you very much indeed, Pete. Wake up a bit.
They love a sign, don't they? I mean,
people do love a sign, don't they?
I drive past these we are considerate constructors signs all the time, and it's usually with someone who's got a bloody great jackhammer smashing it into the ground, making enough noise to literally wake up an entire neighbourhood.
Richard Bound says, as a truck driver, I'm sometimes required to wear a safety helmet when the only risk to my noggin would be a jumbo jet falling out of the sky, and it would be about as much use as a chocolate fire gun, says Richard in Northampton. We are mad, aren't we?
We are. The health and safety stuff is insane.
Well, it seems to me the only way I can get through the afternoon.
Well, it's like the nut, you buy a packet of peanuts and it may contain nuts. Well, I would hope so. Of course it contains nuts. I've actually bought nuts.
You've got a theory about this on planes, though, haven't you? Was it you who said this to me?
Yes, I think it might have been.
Because if you go on planes now, they go, I'm sorry, we haven't got any peanuts because there's somebody with an allergy. No, you're just being tight,
they don't know there's somebody with an allergy because it'd be wrong to ask anyone, but they just assume there might be somebody, so they can't give you any nuts.
I've just been told to break, but I've seen out of the corner of my eye that Kev O'Sullivan has walked into the studio.
Oh, yes.
Do you think he'll walk in and forget that I'm actually on air?
I don't think he'll do that again.
He's also making that big mistake that men of his age with chicken wing arms make. He's got a short sleeve shirt on. You've got a short sleeve shirt on. What's that?
How's the show going? All right.
Yeah. Do you want to know what? I'll tell you what works at 5:30. Keep taking the medication.
I see the worms going well.
Yeah, get out. Yes, that's what. Yes, good.
So he has done it again.
He has done it again. But, Michael, thanks so much. So back in the morning.
Back in the morning, 6 o'clock. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a big day for the elective people of this country, but we can't report on it. People will sometimes go, "Why are you not talking about about the election.
Well, let's explain that. We're not allowed to. So there's a thing called Purdah. It's
wrong.
While
the polls are open.
While the polls are open, we cannot.
Yeah.
We cannot. I have a very good story about that, but I'm wondering whether I can do it. Yes, I can. It was on a radio station I won't mention, and we were all called into the boss's office, and he said, right, Purdah means, you know, when you're doing this, you can't say. And a particular presenter, who I won't name him because he's never worked together, opened up the microphone and went, right, good morning, here we go. This is who I'm voting for. He was off air in 7 minutes. We can't get involved, but we can talk about it on
Friday.
Friday
morning we'll have every single cough and spit and every detail of what happened.
Good man, it's a great breakfast show. Mikey back in the morning. Of course, this is Talk Drive 0344 499 1000. Apparently, Amy's going to push the button now.
I do think Tony Blair and his organisation, the Tony Blair Institute, is very influential within government. There were some rumours not that long ago that Angela Rayner was going to walk from government. She was very cross on a number of different fronts, and that Tony Blair had intervened and tried to persuade her to stay successfully. So I still think he's very much part of that outfit. I also think it's slightly mad to be pump priming lots and lots of energy projects through Great British Energy if the market will pay for itself. And where I sit in Westminster, the energy market is going great guns.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's me for the last 15 minutes. It's been all right. 4:45, this is Talk Drive. We say a very good afternoon to a man who, if I was in power, would be running the police from top to bottom. Peter Blakesley, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Before we get into stuff that's quite serious, it is going to have you and me ranting. The best... what's the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? Anything spring to mind? Let me give you one here from JB in Aberdeenshire. He says, the best health and safety sign I've seen was on an exit door. It said, this door must remain closed at all times. He went, all right, then I'll go out another bleeding way. Because it has gone mad. I remember years ago, says Gary in Glasgow, my niece told me that they no longer play musical chairs in school because they could fall off them and it's against health and safety rules. Anything from the police days?
No, because health and safety really hadn't taken the grip that it's got now back in my day, because I left policing a long time ago. Things like dynamic risk assessments hadn't become a phrase seared into policing language. You just got on with the job and did it. You know, in that old kind of fashioned way, like, does the bad guy live there? Has he got some loot under his bed?
Yeah.
Yes, let's go and kick the door in.
Let's kick the door in and arrest him and put him in jail. No, let's not. Let's have a chat. And then for the person who says you're a nasty man, we'll put you in jail for 3 years, but we'll let him off, yeah?
Can
I just say, well, Pete and I are talking about the other stuff. Please keep them coming. Brilliant. What is the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? This is on the back of a man who was thrown out of his rental property because he had a fish tank that was 2 feet deep and the landlord said people could drown in it.
Yeah,
from next door.
There you go.
87222, start your message with the word talk. Pete, the reason I wanted to get you in, and I'm delighted you joined us as ever, is this. I mean, I fail to know how to even put this. Sergeant Martin Blake, a trained firearms officer, shot and killed Chris Cabba in Streatham in September 2022. Initially, the images of this were of a nice young man, and it was terrible, and Martin Blake was persona non grata. Turns out that actually he was a violent gangster, and some of the footage of the night that he was killed, Chris Cabba, in a nightclub with guns, and Martin Blake was put on trial for murder in a British court, and he successfully proved, despite years of hell, that he was protecting his colleagues because Chris Cabba was actually driving at him and could have killed them. He's free, he clears his name, and today we discover that the Office for Police Conduct have opened an investigation and could get rid of him for gross misconduct. Can I ask you this, as an ex-police officer, why would anybody bloody well want to join the police anymore?
Can I unpick everything of what you've said, please?
Yep.
OK, because first and foremost, I think you were very generous in your description of Chris Cabba. He was a worthless piece of garbage who beat up his pregnant girlfriend, who the night before he was killed was discharging a firearm in a nightclub and then ran outside in an attempt to shoot and finish off, basically, the target. He would have been a murderous so-and-so had he not been thwarted. And, of course, he had a long history of being a violent crook from when he was a child. And let me say this unequivocally, and I don't give a toss who
Good.
I upset.
Good.
The world is a better place without Chris Cabba in it.
Go on.
NX121, which was the code name by which the firearms officer was known, and originally kind of known within the courts, did this country a favour when he quite properly discharged his firearm and killed Cabba. That's not only my opinion, that's clearly the opinion of a jury who sat through weeks of evidence and listened to every single scrap of evidence be given and then be cross-examined, tested to the nth degree. That jury very quickly came back with a unanimous not guilty verdict. There wasn't a shadow of doubt in any of those jurors' minds that NX121 had not committed murder. In furtherance of that, they then wrote a letter to the judge, which is not normal procedure, and I can understand the reasons perhaps why the judge did not allow that letter to be read out in court, although that is what the jury wanted to happen. I know somebody who had sight of that letter because they were in the court and they looked over somebody's shoulder. That letter was absolutely scathing and lambasted not only the Crown Prosecution Service for bringing the case before the court, but the Independent Office of Police Conduct for their investigation. There you have it. So what happens after this officer is rightfully acquitted? And the police, the commissioner at the time, Sir Mark Rowley, was quite fulsome in his support of this officer after he was acquitted. What then happens is that the IOPC, a hugely discredited organisation, who are not independent, who get blown by the wind and are caving in to pressure, largely from black radical activists who have supported families like that of Azelle Rodney, shot dead by a police officer, that of Mark Duggan, shot dead by a police officer, and that of Chris Cabba, shot dead by a police officer. By the way, all three aforementioned men were gangsters. Absolute law-breaking pieces of garbage. The IOPC, in my opinion, and from whispers that come my way, are desperate to nail an armed police officer. Desperate.
Any thoughts about what this has done to Martin Blake and his family?
Well, maybe one day he'll tell his tale.
Has he left the force?
Sir Mark Rowley said he was welcomed back the following day, and I think he returned to duty, but I'm not entirely certain.
I think it's disgusting.
On that. I do know that he's subsequently been promoted because his promotion was put on hold. But that was obviously the least of his concerns. He's had his entire life shaken upside down.
And now he faces an internal investigation by the IOPC for gross misconduct, and we are told could be, after all of this, sacked.
Yes.
So on the basis of what? Because a court of law in this country found him innocent of anything.
It's a police discipline board, and it will be chaired by a very senior police officer. The Met have said today that they're going to get in a chief constable or senior officer.
So mark your own homework time, then.
From a police force outside. Oh, well, let's not remember how keen Sir Mark Rowley is to sack police officers who engage in wrongdoing. But of course...
But he hasn't... Sorry, I'm not... There's nothing wrong with him because he got cleared.
NX121 has not engaged in any wrongdoing, but the discredited IOPC have come to this perverted, vindictive, pernicious decision to stick him on a discipline board, as I say, chaired by a senior police officer. There'll be a lawyer on it and maybe a lay person. We'll have to see what the makeup of it is and when it's going to be held. The Police Federation, of course, will represent this officer, and just like with the trial at the Old Bailey, he'll have the best legal minds on his side.
Which just makes you think that... Yeah, great. It makes you wonder why... We'll talk to you about prisons in a minute. It makes you wonder why anybody would serve, why anybody would put themselves in danger to try and protect the public and get rid of scum off our streets who gets treated alive. Great sympathy. The other story I want to talk to you about today, which is, you'll know about what happened in that Manchester prison. Hassam Abidi, the Manchester Arena terrorist, was put on duties in the kitchen, I think, some weeks ago, whereupon he used instruments and boiling water and attacked 3 guards. We hear overnight violence has erupted again at that jail where Abidi has stabbed and scalded guards. Up to 8 lags, said to be mainly Muslims. We're reading the facts. We're not making this up. Used weights to attack other inmates in a gym at HMP Franklin. What this has done today, Pete, is it was quelled quickly. It's led the prison service to admit that they are bracing for further Islamist-inspired attacks in prison this summer, and says there's real concern that extremists would seek to exploit the overcrowding in our prisons. So we've got a situation where we haven't got enough policemen and women on the streets because the woke ideological bosses are more interested in whatever their agenda is. And when a policeman or woman actually does something that a court proves was correct, still a discredited bunch of whatevers, the IOPC are trying to pull him up, and then if you do actually get a conviction, you send the person to prison. So terrified would anybody to be a prison officer that they're now running amok, running their own prisons. What does it say about, again, I said it earlier, about the fabric of the things that growing up, I was scared of the police and prison was a punishment. It's an outrageous disgrace, Pete.
I have a huge amount of sympathy for prison officers.
And me.
Police officers and prison officers deal with exactly the same people. There's just a wall in between.
Yeah.
The police deal with them outside of the wall and prison officers inside the wall, clearly. They are underprotected, underpaid, undertrained, and consequently their job does not have the status that it should have, which is why they find it difficult to recruit and people are leaving in their droves as well. But it cuts to the whole much, much bigger picture as I see it. So just look at the public bodies that we're talking about now, and then look broader across the UK where bins are not being collected, and then look at the performance of politicians, and then look at those people that do run things and run them abysmally. I think trust is really being eaten away at a dramatic rate here in the UK, in our establishment, in the councils, in the politicians, in all those kind of things.
Because what they do is seemingly stick up for the perpetrators of crime, not the victims. They seem to make excuses for anybody who has done something that in the old days would have been readily punished. they seem to be lost in a world where language or offence or is more important than fact. I have great sympathy for Sergeant Martin Blake. I made the analogy of the Southport killer. They put a picture up, didn't they? Oh, look at him. He's a little choir boy. No, it wasn't that at all. The same with Chris Cabba. Chris Cabba was a violent, murdering gangster.
Extremely
violent. And a
violent.
policeman, I suspect, Sergeant Martin Blake, saved many other people, I suspect, from trouble by doing what he did. Not that we're condoning it. Prisons are being run by inmates, whether they're Muslim inmates or other inmates, because, as you quite rightly say, why would anybody want to be a prison officer? In the end, you almost look at it, and we're old, you and I, and you go, we're heading for not anarchy, but we're heading for a breakdown of the very things that I always took for granted. That's the best way I can describe it.
A low trust society where people do not trust the systems, the people in positions of power and influence, and the bodies that they run. And when that trust caves in and nobody gives a damn, then what's going to replace it, or what is going to follow? It ain't going to be great. It really isn't going to look good.
It frightens me. And then just to finally finish off this segment and to send me into orbit, we find out an hour ago victims are outraged, absolutely correctly, after it's emerged today a notorious Rotherham grooming gang rapist who tried to escape justice by fleeing to Pakistan could be freed early after a bid to move to an open prison. This is Basharat Hussain. Was part of a grooming gang jailed in 2017 for the systematic abuse of several teenage girls. He was put behind bars for 25 years, but apparently he's got issues and he's going to be moved to an open... honestly, sorry, Ryan, where do we go from here then? He's a rapist and he's going to walk free. The prison officer saved life. He's probably going to be sacked.
25 years this vile child rapist got. 25 years in 2017. And the prison service are now considering whether he should go to an open prison. And an open prison basically is come and go as you like, do what you like, just make sure you're back here to sleep at night. Do we really think that's a suitable punishment? Sammy Woodhouse, who was one of his victims, who's been a hugely courageous young woman, who actually gave birth to a child through somebody that raped her and has campaigned fearlessly for a long time, and in many regards has got this whole rape gangs issue to the place where it's at now. And if you're listening, government, yes, we do want a statutory full public inquiry. Millions of us do.
Independent, yeah.
Millions of us do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's hold those people to account. The people in councils, the people in the police, all of those who look the other way for fear of being called racist, for fear of escalating feelings within certain communities. Shame on them all.
So I completely agree.
And this bloke should go to an open prison.
Sorry, girls were raped.
Children.
Children. I hate this. Oh, grooming gangs. They're rapists, OK? These kids were their lives blighted forever, and we're going to free one. We're going to free a child rapist a third of the way into his sentence that he received.
Well, stick him into an open prison, which is, you know, a real luxury.
Do you think they'll get a point where you and I it just makes us too angry, or we're just going to keep the fight going? Because it just does my head in.
There'll be a point when I might go down the firing range and just sharpen up my skills.
God, here we go. The amazing legend that is Peter Blakeslee. Thank you very much indeed. Great to have you. We're going to head to the news at 5, which hopefully will happen, but on this show you never know what's going to happen. Maybe Amy will push the button and you'll get a weather report, but we'll hopefully get the news. We'll take your calls as well in the next hour. Charlie Rowley on the way. What is the most ridiculous health and safety risk, law, sign or whatever you've heard of? 87222. Start your message with the word talk, and those calls, keep them coming. 0344 499 1000. But fingers crossed if Amy gets it right. The news is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Always something in the think tank, which brings me back to the second hour. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Drive. Our attempt in this hour of this broadcast is to make sure that there are no mistakes. Technically, of course, there always are. But we got through the first hour. We appreciate you staying with us, all 7 of you. If you want to be part of this vain attempt at brilliance, 0344 499 1000 is our telephone number. Jodie not here. Harry Potter has jumped in. Harry Potter is on the phone lines, 0344 499 1000. That was slightly weird. You can WhatsApp us, of course. Lanky Rye is here. We just call him Mr. Lauren. 0344 499 1000. And Amy's doing a sterling job so far this hour on the buttons. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Lots to talk about that's serious. Charlie Rowley in a minute. But you know me, I'm trying to just get us through the afternoons. There was this crazy story today that we found whereby a man was told by his landlord that his fish tank that he had in his front room was a serious health and safety risk and could result in people drowning. It was 2 foot deep. Which led me to ask, what is the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard, seen or been presented with? Darren says, in the early 2000s when Tippex was still a thing, do you remember Tippex? Liquid paper. Lovely. Our office manager's PA went to every member of staff demanding they hand over their Tippex because there were genuine concerns that we would sniff the Tippex and get high. Get white on your nose. I said I didn't have any, although I did. But she went into the office at the crack of dawn the next morning and searched every desk and confiscated bottles of Tippex so that all of us wouldn't sniff it. Madness. Sniffing Tippex. We've all done it. Joking. Paul in Portsmouth. Jez, whilst serving, I went for a run out of the camp. Sergeant Major called me in the office for not wearing a high-vis vest. I asked, how do you know you were seen? To which Paul in Portsmouth went, what's the problem then? Honestly, that is what we're dealing with. Davy Reese. Jez, years ago I was working as a signalman. I was walking past some boards bloking part... What? Some boards bloking part of Central Station. I think he means some blokes boarding. Anyway, and there was a notification on the board saying bill posters will be prosecuted, and someone had written underneath it, bill posters is innocent. I've no idea what that means, but I guess it was funny. Thank you very much indeed, my friend. Hello to Lee Phillipson. In 2000, I was serving in the military in Kosovo. An American military truck drove past carrying multiple pallets of plastic-wrapped bottles of water. A sign on the plastic said, contains drinking water, except when empty. I'm loving this. This is brilliant. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. What is the maddest and most ridiculous health and safety warning you have ever seen? We will be giving a prize. I don't know what it is yet. Voice notes. Chloe, go.
Hi, Jeremy. A certain coffee chain removed the one cherry from their Black Forest hot chocolate because it was a choking hazard. I laughed my head off as I'm 55 and asked them if they were serious, and they were deadly serious. Honestly, health and safety gone mad.
Couldn't agree more. Craig on health and safety, go.
I worked for a large retailer and I went on the health and safety course, and they showed us a ladder, and they said if you get to the top of the ladder, don't climb any further. And I put my hand up and I said, is this really a problem? And they were like gobsmacked that I'd actually asked that question.
Honestly, the world's gone nuts. And to finish this little segment, Paul in Hitchin, or it could be Paul Hitchin. No, it's actually Paul Wilson. Afternoon, Jez, and Mr. Blexley. I work at Luton Airport. Ooh, are you? And on the inside of the main hangar doors, I kid you not, above the door control opening panel, it says, warning, aircraft. Honestly, I love this afternoon. 87222, start your message with the word talk. But let's get back to the main news of the day with a man who brings to this station, whenever he's on, a sense of clarity, decency, manliness, brilliance, intelligence and creativity. But we couldn't get him, so Charlie Rowley's on. Hello, Charlie. How are you, son?
Yes, I am a health and safety embodiment of this programme, I think. It could be, you never know.
Can you think of something weird? You must have something. I mean, from all your years of working in politics, I mean, some of this health and safety stuff is rubbish, Charlie, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, I remember getting a takeaway coffee or tea, and in the cup it says, you know, contents may be hot. And you think, that's ridiculous.
No, but people will listen to that and they'll go, really? Yes. I mean, that is literally where we've got. That we're okay. I mean, when we talk about this first serious story, we allow a police officer to be screwed, as we're about to, and yet we're saying, oh, there's an aircraft in an aircraft, and please keep this door closed. How the hell do I get out? And your coffee might be hot and burn your fingers. Great to have you, Charlie. Loads to go. Light and shade is what this show is always about. I am beyond raging. I don't know what to think about this IOPC announcement this afternoon. Just for people tuning in, Sergeant Martin Blake was the firearms officer who killed, as he was being driven at, by Chris Cabba in Streatham in September 2022. You'll have remembered, people, all the outrage, the faux outrage, because there was a picture of this smiling young boy and he'd been mown down by this horrible police officer. Turns out this man, Chris Cabba, was not that at all. He was a violent, murdering gangster who discharged a weapon in a nightclub the night before, who beaconed up his pregnant girlfriend, and was a nasty piece of work. That doesn't, in essence, he was driving at the police officers. Martin Blake had to go through 3 whole years, a murder trial at which he was literally, taken to pieces, but the truth came out. The jury found him unanimously not guilty. In fact, Pete was just saying about a letter to the judge saying this should never have been brought by the Crown Prosecution Service. Further still, the Independent Office of Police Conduct were complicit in making that mistake. Today, this poor man who's tried to rebuild his life, because if Chris Cabra had driven at him and killed 3 police officers, it would be a different story, is now facing an investigation, Charlie, by these bunch of idiots and could be sacked. I just simply want to ask you, what does it say about certainly that, but so much about our country? We seem to not support the people that need supporting and attack those that... I don't get it, mate. It's beyond me. I'd love your take.
Well, I mean, what you've said and everything that you've just said is absolutely right, and don't think anyone can put it better. This was a guy who, as you say, had committed multiple offences. That's an aside, obviously, from looking just at this individual case where he did drive the car at police officers, and Chris Cabba, the convicted there, was shot at by the police officer just doing, as he saw it, his job to protect his officers, the people that put on that uniform day in, day out to go out and protect the public. Now, there's a lot of bad apples, as we know, in some of the police forces, and they're being rooted out. And there have been some horrible cases, obviously, of police officers falling way below the standards that are expected of them. But the broad majority, overwhelming majority of police officers that put on that uniform, especially firearms-trained officers, go out there to take on the most vile and hateful of people that walk among us. And the idea that, as you say, he's gone through this criminal trial, completely exonerated. It only took the jury 3 hours, which I know might sound long, but for a case like this, with all the evidence you've got
Did you know about that letter that Blexley just told us, that it was an unheard... I mean, it was never released, but this is a fact, and he just said that the jury wrote a letter to the judge saying this should never have been brought. This is a disgrace. And for a jury to do that, and yet now the man has to go through it again. It must destroy anybody's faith in wanting to work in that environment, to be honest, Charlie. How is anybody going to want to be a firearms officer?
Well, they wouldn't. You're absolutely right. It's embarrassing because if you're sitting in these organisations, we for a long time we've often thought that the law has never really been on the side, or often it feels, all too often, it's not on the side of the victims. It's on the side of the perpetrators or the people that sort of, try and chance their arm or want to make a fast and quick buck in the UK. This is a police officer that defended his own other officers in the line of duty at working at high stakes, very high level, obviously, with firearms. He's been completely exonerated. And the idea that if you're the chief exec now of the police and complaints body that's had to now review this because the law or the framework or the guidance that they've got from the Home Office suggests that they should, you'd be embarrassed.
Well, Peter Blexley says no. He says this is the IOPC who have always wanted to bring down an armed officer and make an example of them, and they've missed out on several occasions. He thinks this is politically motivated. Whether it's from on high or it's them with an agenda, it's an absolute flipping disgrace. Martin Blake was discharging that weapon against a known murderous gangster who had firearms. He did his job. He was persecuted. He was put through the courts, and now he has to... I mean, I'd walk away and sell my story. I mean, I guess he wouldn't do that because he's probably wedded to the job and is a thoroughly decent bloke. But, you know, when we talk in this country, Charlie, this is what annoys me about, you know, the impact of words and the impact on people's mental health and how we should treat people perfectly. What about Martin Blake? Does anybody give a toss about what he went through? Him and his family? No, not at all. They won't think about him, will they? They'll think about the bloke that was killed. I don't want to see anybody killed, but Chris Cabot was not. All that noise that emanated early on has dissipated because actually everybody knows that at the end of the day, right? I actually got a call on this. You'll be all right to stay with me, won't you? Andrew's in Hertfordshire. Andrew, I'm with Charlie Ruddy. What you got on Chris Cabot, mate?
Yeah, so remember the film Catch-22? You couldn't be mad to fly, but the only people that could do 25 missions were mad people, therefore you couldn't fly. Any police officer that carries a gun now is mad. Therefore, you can't be mad to carry the gun. Why would they do it? This is over. Hand the tickets in. Do not do it.
Are you a police officer?
No, I'm not. No. And I tell you what, the only reason my daughters are safe in London is because of people like that police officer. It's over. Yeah. It's double jeopardy. You know, he was found not guilty by a jury of 12 good people. That's the end of it. You can't have a second bite at it. And the thing is this is reasonable suspicion. So therefore, he's hung out to dry.
Yeah.
He's been named. His family's been humiliated. He's got children. They ended his life. But you know, the lefties, the woke, they've won.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more, Andrew in Hertfordshire. You'd agree with that, Charlie, wouldn't you? It's disgusting to treat somebody like that. Disgusting.
Definitely. And, you know, just that point about London, you know, London feels as though it's becoming, you know, even incredibly unsafe as the days go on. So to see people, when you actually see a police officer, it's obviously very welcome. But to see, as Andrew said, someone with a firearm, someone that's trained and gone through high-stakes training, high-end training to be able to discharge that weapon when he needs to keep us all safe, to go through the ringer once is one thing. To have to do it all over again, it's completely something else. And I hope he gets the justice and compensation that he deserves.
Right, compensation needs more than that. Let's bring it to your favourite subject. You are a political nerd, aren't you? Despite the beard that tells me that you're thinking of a career in blue movies. I'm joking. Tony Blair yesterday. I found myself in a slightly weird position, Charlie, because I came on air yesterday and I started cheering for Tony Blair. Tony Blair, who came out yesterday and said that in essence, the whole net zero thing that Starmer and that dreadful human being Ed Millipede had been banging on about was not only going to destroy this country financially and the impact on people already struggling from a cost of living crisis due to the pandemic, etc., that should be considered, but also actually what he said is that most people in this country realise that even if we did achieve this stupid target, we're only 1% of global emissions and nobody else actually gives too much of a damn because they're trying to work out the things that matter to the people in their country. I had Matthew Torbid on yesterday who blew me away in what he said, because he said, I would not be surprised if this was all part of a Labour approach so that Starmer can deflect some of that to Blair, realising it's unpopular at zero, row back from it in the summer, and Miliband will be out in a summer reshuffle. And I went to bed last night thinking that was actually probably quite clever from what Torbit said. Today we're here. Tony Blair sort of done a bit of a loophole. He's claimed that Sir Keir Starmer's approach to net zero is the right one. Just a day after he criticised his green policies. Yesterday, the former PM said the zero were doomed to fail. Today, he says, it should be all right. The clarification from Sir Tony, who has been advising dreary Starmer on an informal basis, comes amid much anger behind the scenes at his intervention, with one Labour source described it as a public tantrum and really unhelpful. I don't want to get into a wider discussion about how useless the Labour Party is. Please tell me your opinion on whether Ed Millipede is a dead man walking, because he should be.
I think he is. I think he's gone far too far and too fast. And he seems to be, whenever he does a broadcast interview, if you can get hold of him, he just seems to be absolutely rigid and inflexible in this approach to net zero, which is ultimately And if he can't see the wood through the trees on the ground, which means that having claimed that he'll cut energy bills, they're actually going up.
Yep.
The creation of this GB Energy that was supposed to be heralded at the last general election, we've worked out is now just another Quango, a Quango which Number 10 seem to be wanting to bin off.
I just want to tell you, I need to tell you, this is Mike's and my favourite thing. So GB Energy is run by a bloke called Jürgen. Do you know this? Jürgen doesn't have an office, right? He's on 200 grand a year. He's got no staff. They don't do anything, GB Energy. But breaking news this week, finally, there's a website for GB Energy. Did you know about this? And there's a section that allows you to advertise for jobs. But there's no jobs. So there's this website, which presumably you'd have used electricity to create, I don't know, run by a bloke called Jürgen, who lives in Stockport, but presumably comes from Germany with a name like that. That's as far as we've got. And when we cut it down, right, when we cut it down to the most basic terms, you know what I thought of your lot at the end. But we are talking about a country right now that cannot afford the interest on its debts. And we've got an ideological bunch of prats in power who think that the answer to that is to spend billions we haven't got trying to achieve something that isn't achievable and everybody else has moved on from. This is our elected government, Charlie.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I didn't, as it happens, know that there was a website, but I know what I'll be doing straight after this.
Oh, check Jürgen out. I think he's a porn star. I think it's all very weird. I don't think Jürgen is who Jürgen says he is, but it's true. GB Energy is run by Jürgen, and he's got no staff. He's got a website with no vacancies. He's got no building, no policies, and he's on 200 grand a year.
And the whole prospect or the whole point of GB Energy, it doesn't create any energy.
No.
It's just
but this is the point. GB Energy doesn't make any energy. What is GB Energy? Nobody knows. But when we laugh, then you look at the serious side, which is the disgusting land grab against farmers. Years, decades, family generations of providing, you know, farming, which provides our food. Oh, yeah, that's right. So we'll land grab so we can build wind farms that don't create enough wind to make enough electricity. So we'll have to import it. So your bills will go up again. And by the way, because we've screwed the farmers, your foods will go up. I literally went to the supermarket this morning. I came back and I bought I know I shouldn't have bought it. It was a milkshake. That's going to be taxed by Richard III, Rachel Thieves in a minute, isn't it? And my wife said it's got smaller. She was talking about the milkshake. And it is true. Everything's shrunk. Everything's more expensive. And by screwing the farmers, that's just going to get worse, isn't it?
Absolutely right. And look, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to say within our island, within our shores, we should try and have as clean air, maybe as possible, so, you know, that kids don't grow up with respiratory conditions or whether
go for a walk in the Highlands then. You know, I'm jumping in for a reason. Somebody said to me earlier, it's how you ask people. When the net zero zealots go, everybody wants the... If you say, do you have concerns about the climate? Do you want to say, yes. But do you want to bankrupt this country so you can't even drive your car, go to the hospital? No, not right now, because we're enough in the poo, frankly. That's how I see it. Maybe that's wrong.
No, I think that's totally right, because I think, you know, the point I was making, which you've just, you know, exactly rightly said, I think people do care about their environment. Of course you do. You want to give, you know, the next generation still something there. But what you don't want to do is to increase the cost of living when things are difficult anyway, and that includes higher energy bills. But it also means, and this is where I think Tony Blair was right. I don't know where he stands now, if he sort of backtracked on it today, but yesterday I thought he was absolutely right to say, look, as a UK, even as you know, as France or European allies, we are spending so much money, and that money goes onto the taxpayer and to hardworking people that have to foot that bill to drive down to net zero. When the mass polluters, you're looking at China, you're looking at Brazil now, I think you're looking at India for sure, and the US, which is ever going to increase. You know, we can't fund the global race of trying to get a cleaner air or emissions down when we are a small island. So, of course, we're being asked to do far too much. People in this country are being asked to pay far too much more for something that we can't fix.
Here's the other thing. We had Tyson yesterday, right? This is something that I feel really strongly about. I believe that the energy debate will be even more important by the next election than the migration debate, because this government came to power promising lower energy bills. They've gone up. Jürgen is just heading this waste of space GB Energy. As we have to import because renewables don't work, right? What Donald Trump said, I don't care about the friends of the earth. I've already given an idea of how I deal with people who don't agree with fracking. We have liquid gold. We have oil and gas. We have it underneath our ground. Why would you bankrupt your people when there is money that can make those people's lives better? I don't know. Subsidise the energy bills in the areas where fracking has to take place. But to me, that's like having money in the bank and still borrowing it at 150% interest rate because I don't know what, you haven't got the brains to work out the theory. Doesn't make sense to me, pal, at all. Not at all.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And that is the number one question, is to, when you ask people about, well, net zero and trying to get energy into the country, or, you import it. The cost of importing it has to come from somewhere. Yeah. So it is the balance between maybe trying to, whatever renewables we have to use, yes, if it's cost effective, but also when you've got resource to bring people's bills down in this country, then you should look to it.
Couldn't agree more, Charlie Roy. It's always a pleasure and never a chore. We're loving the beard. Get it trimmed. 0344 499 1000. We're coming back on Talk Drive because Amy is going to push this button now.
I do think Tony Blair and his organisation, Tony Blair Institute, is very influential within government. There were some rumours not that long ago that Angela Rayner was going to walk from government. She was very cross on a number of different fronts, and that Tony Blair had intervened and tried to persuade her to stay successfully. So I still think he's very much part of that outfit. I also think it's slightly mad to be pump priming lots and lots of energy projects through Great British Energy if the market will pay for itself. And where I sit in Westminster, the energy market is going great guns.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lovely to have your company, all 7 of you. This is JK on Drive, on Talk, of course, the home of free speech and common sense. And at this time, on a Wednesday, I always bring in a man who brings to this station panache, style, decorum, and also is the presenter of Drive Time on Thursdays and Fridays. For some reason, he's turned up looking like something out Ain't Half Up Mum today. What is that suit?
I was going to go with the man from Del Monte. It's a cream linen suit. It is a hot day. It's nice. I'm going to a dinner later on, and I thought it'd be
You're
nice.
going for a dinner? Who with?
Yeah.
Just
a few people.
No, but is it like business? It's
like a business dinner, yeah.
I didn't get invited.
It's with a politician. No, you were NFI'd.
I don't get invited anywhere. I am persona non grata.
You're
and I'm happy to
a social
be so.
outcast.
Am I?
Yeah, well, certainly in my social circle.
Listen, I sat on the train with Jim Davidson the other day. Peter Blexley, please come out of retirement and help the police into some common sense and above all the protection for the firearms unit, who I understand don't get paid any more than the wet university students currently doing it. I couldn't agree more. Right, listen, before we get serious, I love this now. This is the new... do you do this on Drive Time, where you just set a funny question for the day, or do you spend
sometimes?
All the time?
Yeah.
Because I did vibrators on Monday, and it went...
Literally?
Do you not know about that?
No, what happened?
Oh, it's fantastic. Everybody's talking about food processing, audience... So we find a story of the Iranian asylum seeker who gets a judge to agree that he can stay here because he's vibrating... He's a sex toy business.
Right.
Vibrators. He smuggles them. He can't go back to Iran because under Islamic law, they are not allowed, vibrators.
Right.
And there was a huge buzz
Did not know that.
There was a huge buzz about the story.
As it were.
And we had a mass debate about it, and we did, what's the matter with you? And we did it for 3 hours, and the audience went up 20%. So, the same today. Health and safety warning. It was a huge debate. A man who was told his fish tank was a serious health and safety risk because it was 2 foot deep and people could come into his house and drown.
Brilliant.
Which has led us to say, what's the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever had? Flying back from Rome on an EasyJet flight. This is Alan F. from Liverpool. Why would you put Alan F. from Liverpool? Or is it Alan from... No. They gave that message about not selling peanuts on the flight because the passenger had a peanut allergy, so I bought one of their packets of rather lovely wafer biscuits and it contained hazelnut paste. That's really brilliant. Yeah. That is actually fantastic. Caroline... Oh no, that's just basically she wants to marry Peter Blexley. Mick says, don't be horrible to Amy, she's lovely. Oh, this is great, Dave. Seen in the warning section for a box of eggs contains eggs.
Brilliant. Well, I've had that with a packet of nuts where it says contains nuts.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, yes, enough from you. Or alternatively, when you get handed, especially
a bag of nuts,
takeaway or something, you get handed a hot cup of tea or something and it says caution hot, contents hot.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Brian says, I went to a construction site to do a delivery. I put on my high-vis jacket and trousers and hard hat. After a short time, someone came out to me and told me it was the wrong colour. I asked what I could do about that. I did the delivery regardless. That's what we're talking about. Who's this?
Yeah.
While staying on Ascension Island...
As you do.
Says Julia. What, is that in the Falkland Islands?
Ascension Island? No, isn't it in the Indian Ocean? Isn't it near St Helena or something?
Come on, find out, Ryan.
Where's Ascension Island?
All day. Ascension Island. While staying on Ascension Island, a fireman pooed in the swimming pool. While staying on Ascension Island, a fireman pooed in the swimming pool whilst drunk. I really do manage to get it.
Wow.
The RAF, who were in charge, closed the pool for a week for health and safety. The fireman was in a lot of trouble. The question is, Julia, now, I don't want to make it...
The question is Julia. No. You call me Julia?
No, this is the woman who
Julia
sent the
there,
text.
okay.
If
many
it was,
things, but I'm not Julia Hartley.
If it was a small, quick, hard poo, you could just have scooped it out. I mean, if he pebble dashed the pool,
with a little sort of fishing net, you would imagine.
Gary. Oh, brilliant. Gary, did you ever think you'd end up on national radio talking about poo with Jeremy Carr? Gary from Portree. I worked as a painter and we were painting the outside of a train station. Every time a train came into the station, we were told to shout train and stand against the wall at the back of the platform, despite the platform being full of commuters standing on the edge of the platform waiting to get on the train. Train! John Hickson, Stokesay Church, where I live, has a sign. Oh my God, this is the winner. Have you seen this? Take care in the graveyards. Headstones can be dangerous. I mean, what in the name of
Headstones
God?
can be dangerous.
Oh my God.
In what way?
Well, it can fall on your head.
Hazardous?
Bill in Northumberland says the major issue with health and safety is that there are too many underqualified and underexperienced people in this profession. I'm a retired chartered safety practitioner and it's totally frustrating for the profession, says Bill in God's country, which is Northumberland. Talk radio, hi Jez. I'm an electrician and put cable on concrete ceiling. What, generally, or you did on a particular day? And I put a cable on a concrete ceiling. The health and safety guy came round and told me to wear a hard hat or be thrown off site. I put it on, and when he walked around the corner, I took it off because he's a... Ooh, there you go.
There we are. Do you know what? When I was a producer at the BBC, we had to fill in a risk assessment.
You can't swear like that. You were at the BBC.
I know. We had to fill in a risk assessment for all the outside broadcasts and stuff. Basically, what they said was, as long as you can just demonstrate that you've considered the risk, that you have thought about it, that's fine. So instead of filling out these very long forms, I just emailed, like, the production manager was like, I've considered the risk of this. That's all I ever did. I never filled out a risk assessment.
Absolutely outrageous. Dan, voice note. Amy's going to push the button now.
The company I work for has 2 yards separated by a 30-mile-an-hour road. We are not allowed to walk across the road to get from 1 yard to the other, just in case we get run over. Instead, we have to be driven in a car.
I can't do this.
That is mad.
Sorry, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
He's got 2 yards.
Britain 2025.
He has to be driven. Oh, Rachel says, Rachel's currently in therapy. She says, please tell Peter he looks particularly gorgeous this afternoon. Why did she do that? He just went on this. He went, oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you very much.
Clearly a woman of great taste.
Obviously a woman who needs... Oh, silly health and safety warnings. My 2-year-old kid's medicine said on the bottle, do not drive or operate heavy machinery when taking this. I'm loving this. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. What's the most ridiculous health and safety warning you've ever heard? Let's make it serious for a minute. Light and shade on this show with me. Sergeant Martin Blake.
What is going on? Honestly, it's crazy.
I mean, for people who don't know, Chris Cabba was shot dead by Sergeant Martin Blake. It was September 22. There was a big outrage. Young black boy killed. The pictures, there was demonstrations that night. Then the truth came out. This was a violent gangster who the night before had released a firearm in a nightclub, chased somebody out, wanted to kill them. He'd beaten up his pregnant girlfriend. Litany and history of violence. I just want to say this to you because I don't know if you heard what Peter said. Martin Blake, castigated, had to go all the way through in a court of law a murder charge, completely exonerated. The jury, you might have heard in the news, took less than 3 hours. They actually wrote to the judge, the jury, and said this should never have come. The IOPC was slaughtered, as were the CPS. Today, the IPOC, despite the fact this man's been through hell, only set protecting his colleagues, by the way, who could have been killed because this guy was driving them at very high speeds. The IOPC are going to introduce a hearing and an investigation, and he could be sacked. Why would you even bother being a police officer?
Well, exactly. So let's take out, just for a second, all the bad stuff about Chris Cabba, who was a complete scumbag, by the way, and I will shed absolutely no tears for him.
No.
Did he deserve to die? Did he not? I don't want anybody to die. I don't want the police to go around shooting people, right? What happened was that this police officer followed to the letter every single thing he was trained to do. He did not fire out of anger. He did not fire out of desperation or panic or any of those things. He fired because he had to, because this person Chris Cabba was going away from him.
He was driving towards him and his two colleagues at 60 miles an hour.
Apologies, yes, you're absolutely correct.
Really important point.
He didn't stop. He didn't stop. So
despite warnings.
So the point is, a court of law has exonerated this person. Now, what happens, as Peter Blexley will tell you far better than I will, is as soon as you fire your weapon as a police officer, your career stops. You stop immediately. They take the weapon off you. It's in for forensics. You are basically suspended on full pay for the whole time. Martin's name was not meant to be in the public domain.
Nope.
Now it is because of an application to the court. 3 hours on a murder charge is nothing. That is nothing for a jury.
But
That's basically a jury
Pete was on the show an hour ago and he said the frightening thing is the IPOC have been after bringing down an officer who's killed somebody. They failed on 2 occasions. This man is being made an example. I wouldn't go back and do this job if I was Martin Blake. I'd go to every media outlet in the world and tell the story. I think it is utterly disgusting. I know there are bad cases in the Met,
sure, of course
this guy was doing his job.
Sergeant Martin Blake was doing his job. He was a highly trained officer who followed the law to the letter. He's been exonerated by a court. It has all been gone over in great detail.
Completely agree, pal.
And actually, if you look at the statement from the IOPC, what are they doing? Yet again, they're saying there's a lot of concern about this in black communities. There's a lot of concern about this in every community. It's not about black communities. It's about the whole community saying, should this have happened or should this not? In an ideal world, it wouldn't have happened. But in an ideal world, Chris Cabba would have been a law-abiding citizen who would not have been trying to kill police officers. A police officer shot one shot and has had his life destroyed as a result of this. I would be very surprised if he could go back to work. He's had to move house because of threats against him and his family. This is absolutely outrageous. And you've got to say, as you correctly say, why on earth would you join the police? But it's not just about people joining the police. It's about people in the police at the moment who are armed officers. Not very many of them in England and Wales and Scotland anyway, whereas in Northern Ireland every officer from constable to chief constable has a weapon. But if you fire that weapon, someone's going to hesitate at some stage. They're going to hesitate, and a police officer is going to be killed by someone like Chris Cabba because of this.
And if Chris Cabba had driven and murdered 3 police officers, there would have been absolute outrage, quite rightly, that this hadn't happened.
And people asking questions about they were armed, why didn't they fire back?
Such a brilliant point. At what point now would you, as a as a firearms officer, male, female, that's it, what would you do? Oh my God, should I? There's going to be a moment of doubt, and that then impacts on how you do your job. I think it's disgusting, Pete.
The firearms officers need to follow their training. They need to be given the freedom and the protection, and I would argue anonymity actually as well. Like, I'm all for sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, you know, the public should know everything, but actually in this case, that is going to destroy your life. You're doing your job, and you're not actually doing that as a private citizen. Sergeant Martin Blake, he's not a private citizen. He is a police officer, and he should, I believe he should be given anonymity, or should have been, or it should have been kept.
But then we'll give...
His life is destroyed.
I'm going to say the wrong thing here, and Ryan's probably going to dump it, but we'll give anonymity. Do we give anonymity to one of those 2 slags that killed Jamie Bolger when he came out of prison? Yes. We've given anonymity to all sorts of people who've committed terrible crimes, because if they come back into the communities, they might be hounded. I don't want that to happen. But this poor bugger, he's had his life pulled to bits. And now the IOPC, who are a disgrace
for doing this job. And quite frankly, I don't want people like Chris Cabba to have guns. I don't want gangsters like him to live the life that he lived.
I've got some breaking news.
Go for it.
We're going to go to a break, which gives you time to respond. Wow. Chancellor Rachel Reeves, it's just been announced, is under investigation by the Parliament's Standards Commission over registration of interests. Richard III's in trouble. Back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, Kev is here from 7, Petri from 10, but that breaking news for the break, and it's wonderful that we've got our political... Well, you're just a nerd, aren't you? The man. You're the main man. Man from Del Monte. Peter Cardwell is here.
He likes to say yes.
Breaking news. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is under investigation by Parliament Standards Commission over registration of interest. The Chancellor spokesman says Her spokesman has just said it's over a late entry.
OK.
We're told the interests have previously been declared on time in the separate Minister's Register of Interests.
Interesting. OK, well, this happens fairly frequently. It's not that serious, sorry, but yeah, they will declare things late. It'll be interesting though about the freebies.
I'm going to say the wrong thing.
Go for it.
But if you're late with putting your tax things in, her bloody people at the HMRC are all over like you like a rash. She's supposed to be the most important financial person in the country, and she can't even file her stuff on time.
Yes.
So why should we all pay our tax on? I'm being completely serious.
Exactly. No, I forgot to pay a bit of tax recently. I got a letter from the people saying if you don't pay this, we'll take you to court. Previously, HMRC owed me money. They sent me a cheque, and I said my bank account doesn't take checks anymore. You need to send me a bank transfer. 2 months. 2 months.
God, that's good. I tried to ring them. It took 5 months. But it's interesting. So,
yes.
yeah, OK, well, it's not a non-story. She's being investigated.
No, it's a story. It's bad for her, and certainly senior politicians need to lead by example, and she should have declared whatever it is, whether this is tickets to different concerts or football matches or freebies. I think the freebies row is going to come up again because of what is declared. We know that sometimes donations come to different offices of politicians so they can employ more staff. It'll be interesting to see the detail of this, but certainly it's not very good for Rachel Reeves.
Talking about good looks, yesterday I found myself starting this show by cheering Tony Blair, which I never thought would happen. But Sir Tony Blair yesterday said that Keir Starmer and, in essence, Ed Millipede were completely deranged because this net zero madness was going to cost a country that was struggling to even pay the interest on its debt and its people too much hardship, and that actually people were aware, this is what Blair said yesterday, that even if this ridiculous target, which is unachievable, was achieved, and it's 1%, the rest of the world's moved on to what they consider more important things. If you ask people, do they care about the environment? Yes. Are you prepared to be screwed? No. So today, we had Torbett here yesterday, and he said, I think this is really interesting because I think this gives Keir Starmer leg room behind the Blair criticism to shift Miliband out because the Labour Party has woken up to the realisation this is madness. The reformer, right, bloody net zero madness. But today Blair sort of backed down. He's claimed that Starmer's approach to the net zero is the right one. Yesterday, the former PM said it was doomed to fail. Today, he says, well, actually, I think it's quite a good idea. Number 10 says that it was a public tantrum and rather unhelpful. There's got to be more to this, hasn't there?
There will be more to it, and certainly with Ed Miliband, he's not popular within the parliamentary party.
Is he
he's
popular
not popular
anywhere?
No, he isn't.
Idiot.
And actually, a lot of what he is pushing, and he is a real zealot, he really believes this stuff. And actually, if you look at, yes, he does. And if you look at what Starmer, Reeves and people like Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, are saying and doing, it's a realisation that changing the entire economic structure of this country so it goes towards net zero would be massively damaging. And also, if America's not going to do it, if India's not going to do it, if China's not going to do it, why on earth would we do it?
Okay, but let me ask you the question. Did they not realise that before they stuck their flag in the pole of net zero?
They didn't, because they didn't probe it, they didn't look at it, they weren't in government. And the problem with so many people in Labour is that, and this is top to bottom, they often believed, well, the Tories are dreadful, we hate the Tories are bad people, we'll get into government and we'll do it better just because we're good people and they're bad people. And the fact is there was no real plan. And the problem with things like net zero is that they say, oh, it's fluffy and lovely and to do with the environment. Then you look at everybody wants clean air, everybody wants to recycle things. Great, fine.
I don't.
Do that.
I don't.
Okay, maybe
I
you
put
don't.
it all in the same bin just to hack everybody off.
Do you not want clean air? Do you not like green spaces?
I'm going to say the wrong thing.
No, hold on.
You want to have the debate?
Let me finish my point.
Do I want clean air?
Yes.
I want pensioners to not freeze. I want veterans to not be homeless. I want farmers not to be screwed. I think we've got... No, I really mean this. It makes me angry, not with you. Their priorities are wrong, right? I hear all this crap. I'm sure we want to save the environment, but I sort of think we should be saving pensioners, and I sort of think we should be saving veterans, and I sort of think we should be saying to the waspy women, sorry we've lied to your face, we should be looking after you. I think my kids should be able to get a good education. I think my mother, when she was alive, she's dead, by the way, should be able to go to hospital and get an appointment. I think those things are important,
Well, those things are absolutely important, and the environment is less important.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Especially as we're not going to make a blind button of difference to the environment as we're 1% of... Listen, I am not as much of a climate skeptic as some other presenters in the station. I do believe climate change is happening. I believe some of it's man-made. The other aspect of this is, what's the point of net zero? And no one has convincingly answered that to me.
Mike said, if we get there, what happens next? Do we get a certificate and we just go back? I mean, it's interesting, isn't
it?
Like
the Tufty Club.
It's ludicrous, isn't it? But bigger than that, right? Torbett then went on and went, Miliband will go. Reeves has already been told by the IMF no wiggle room.
Yeah. Well, I think she's got to break her fiscal rules. I think she's got to put taxes up in. I'm not saying she should. I'm saying I think she absolutely will put taxes up in the budget in October.
He
November.
said that he doesn't even see Starmer leading this government into the next election. That he actually believes that. And it was really interesting to hear the conversation. He said that certainly what he did to pensioners 11 weeks in was his poll tax moment.
Well, there are no guarantees in this, and it's interesting actually. We've got the local elections tomorrow. I remember the local elections 4 years ago. I was working for the station. Boris Johnson, king of all he surveyed, by-election in Hartlepool, loads of councillors. That was peak Boris. People were saying 5th term for Boris Johnson. Where is he now? We've had a number of prime ministers since then.
Do you know one of the things in hindsight? Do you want to know one of the things in hindsight? And I used to argue with you non-stop and be a massive supporter. I think there were many great things about Boris Johnson. But do you know, one of the things that I think started his downfall was his movement towards net zero and that green agenda. I genuinely. Can I tell you a very funny story today? I look at the Labour front bench.
I'll be the judge of that.
I think Millipedes, I think he's one of the most dangerous people in this country. I think Richard III, Rachel Thieves, is completely over-promoted and is no good. Starmer is a liar. Let's talk about Jonathan Reynolds. This man now runs British Steel. This is the man who said, I'm a solicitor.
But I'm not a solicitor. Yes.
He went, did you see him? I just want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Mike told me this is brilliant. He runs British Steel. He went to a colliery or whatever it is at Steelworks in Scunthorpe. Have you seen this?
No.
And he put on all the protection stuff, which you have to, and he went into a blast furnace. And when he came out, he was sweating, and he went, it was really hot in there.
Yes.
And we looked at him, we went, and you're running British Steel. I mean, you do look at the Labour front bench and you go, they're crap, man. Aren't they?
Yeah.
You won't say that, will you?
Well, listen, they're not doing as good a job as they should.
But I'll tell you who will do a fantastic job and better than me is you tomorrow on Drive.
Oh,
are you here Thursday and Friday?
I am here on Thursday and Friday, on Saturday and Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday, and I see you in September.
Do you know what, actually? Do you know that guest, Colonel Richard Kemp?
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently,
It's a joke, by the way. Just so you're aware. The face tells me this is going to be a line. Go on, Richard Kemp. Yes. Look at the face. I know it. Go on.
I've got the worst poker face ever. It was actually Rachel Reeves who told me that we can get him on the station more cheaply in December, January, and February. What do you call her again? What do you say her name is?
Rachel Thieves.
Yeah, but the other one.
Richard III.
Yeah, she said December, January, February. Now is the winter of our discount camp.
Right, I told you it was going to be crap, and it will be crap. No, he's brilliant. Richard, what's your name again?
Peter.
Peter Cardwell in his linen suit here tomorrow from 4 on Drive. It's 11 minutes to 6.
I do think Tony Blair and his organisation, the Tony Blair Institute, is very influential within government. There were some rumours not that long ago that Angela Rayner was going to walk from government. She was very cross on a number of different fronts, and that Tony Blair had intervened and tried to persuade her to stay successfully. So I still think he's very much part of that outfit. I also think it's slightly mad to be pump priming lots and lots of energy projects through Great British Energy if the market will pay for itself. And where I sit in Westminster, the energy market is going great guns.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9 minutes to 6. Amy, if you could please, she's had a bit of a problem today. Could you push the button now?
Sport Summary on Talk.
We love her, really. She's fantastic. She's the best button pusher we've got, honestly, in the studio right now. We say a very good evening. Honestly, that Sam Allard, he's done to me. He's never... Max Scott, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
What does that say on your T-shirt?
It says Conquer Coffee.
I'm glad it said Conquer. I thought the NK... Yes, good. What is Conquer Coffee?
It's just a coffee brand.
Are you being paid to wear that T-shirt?
No, not at all. No, it's like I used to live by it in Bournemouth, live next to where it was distilled.
You live in Bournemouth?
I used to live in Bournemouth. I'm not from Bournemouth, as you can tell from the regional accent.
Where are you from, then?
I'm from Nottinghamshire, North Nottinghamshire.
We've done that. Now, listen, last night, Champions League semi-final, I was on with Sam. He said it would be a score draw. I said I thought that PSG would win.
You said that?
Yeah. Interestingly, Arsenal never got going, 1-0. Don't see him clawing their back in the Parc des Princes, sorry. Fans accused of being subdued during the game. What are we talking about?
Well, it's quite funny, this, because before the game, Arsenal posted a video of Mikel Arteta trying to rev up the fans with sort of some emotive music, and he's staring down the barrel of the camera.
Can I just say about Mikel Arteta, he looks like the devil. I don't think he'd actually rev up the fans. I think he might scare them. He looks like something out the Addams Family. Like that. David Brent with eyebrows.
He's got a deep brow, doesn't he?
He's got a deep brow. What do you call that? What is it called? A monobrow or something?
If it connects, then it's a monobrow. I don't know if he's got a monobrow, but he's definitely got a deep brow.
Yeah.
And that was on full show in this video. But ironically,
yes,
in a historic night for one of the biggest occasions for the club in the last 20 years, arguably. There's accusations that the fans didn't turn up. Wayne Rooney was on television, sort of punditry, and he said that he was disappointed with the fans.
Oh, I think he was disappointed with the meal.
Wow. Obviously, maybe the support didn't quite match the occasion, and it's going to be a really difficult task.
Yeah, it is.
It's only happened twice where in a semi-final of a Champions League, the side that lost the first home leg then got through to the final.
Can I say something about Arsenal? And actually, Piers, this is one of my friends, Piers Morgan is one of my best friends. He's a massive Arsenal fan. He went, and people get excited. They, to me, being straight, and listen, I support West Ham, so I'm used to almost as dire as Watford, right? They seem to flatter to deceive. They can be utterly brilliant. I think Saka is just unreal.
Magnificent player, yeah.
You saw them in the quarter-final, Declan scoring those two. They looked mesmerising.
They beat Real Madrid 5-1.
Real Madrid to the sword,
yeah,
I was about to say. They looked really ordinary last night. And that sort of up and down is really interesting because it doesn't deviate 2%. It sort of deviates 10 or 15%. That would be my worry.
Well, that's been the story of their past couple of seasons.
Yeah,
they've gone through magnificent purple patches, looked completely unplayable.
Yeah.
And then, they've drawn far too many games this season, and that's really been the reason that they've not been able to challenge Liverpool and why they've won it. Liverpool have won it with 4 games to play, which has contributed to the idea that maybe the Premier League this season hasn't quite been the product that we want it to be. The same three teams that came up have gone straight back down with loads of games to go.
Because West Ham would have gone down if the rubbish hadn't come up.
Well, yeah, there's an argument to say they'd really be involved, and Manchester United and Wolves, they'd all be in there.
Yep.
But such has been, I guess, the Premier League being this close shot, maybe. And it's been the same story at the top of the table, hasn't it?
Yeah.
There's been no real competition for Liverpool for months now.
No.
And it's just been this procession, which is exactly what we don't want. So disappointing from Arsenal. But if they can beat Real Madrid 5-1, if they can beat Real Madrid 2-1 at the Bernabeu, we cannot write them off.
No, I accept that. They get an early goal. It's anybody's game. But you'd think they'd have been energised. You'd have thought they would have been up for it. You would have thought they would have been 1,000,000% into last night. Tonight, second semi-final, Barcelona, Inter tonight. How are you calling this?
Barcelona, I think they win by 2 or 3.
I think they win the Champions League.
The fascinating thing about Barcelona is they've got this player, Rafinha, who a couple of years ago was in a relegation dogfight with Leeds United in the Premier League. He kept them up that season. He is now in sort of a battle for the Ballon d'Or. He's scored 12 Champions League goals in 12 Champions League games, 29 this season. And I just think that's a fabulous story, that you've got a player that's now gone to one of the most sort of famous teams in the world and looks like one of the best players in the world. Do
you believe in the seamless sort of movement of a show and how it works? Because you've given me the perfect in for a story I'm going to give to you, which I gave to Sam last night. He didn't believe me. Leeds United, who are a feeling, are considering sacking Daniel Farke, the guy that's brought them up from the Championship. They'll probably win the title, they or Burnley, record points, because apparently there is concern at Ellen Road that he doesn't have the wherewithal in the Premier League. Was relegated twice with Norwich. Do you know who the rumours... You will know this. Do you know who the rumours are that are going to take over at Leeds?
Steven Gerrard?
No. Jose Mourinho. I mean, I
think that'd be box office, Jeremy.
Mate, I'm so with you, Maxie. That would be like... Honestly, Leeds fans are... Jose Mourinho running Ellen Road. I mean, it would be... I'd love to see that, wouldn't you? What a journey that would be.
I'd love to see it. Can I say this about Daniel Farke? I do think that it's incredibly harsh. He's only won 9 out of 52 games in the Premier League, but that was with Norwich, who, it's pretty well documented at the time, really just wanted to yo-yo, to take the money and
I think it would be harsh, but I don't think we'd be hearing about it if it wasn't going to happen. I think it would have been denied. I think he will go, don't you?
I think you don't hear those rumours if there isn't truth to it.
I mean, that to me is like...
But it's also harsh. They could get 100 points in the Championship. Yeah. And he could still be sacked. So it would be incredibly harsh. I do think we need to normalise, though, promoted managers being replaced, because what got you there isn't always what's going to keep you there.
Plus players.
Or make you
and actually, if you think about it, it's a really, really good... It's much better than Sam Allardyce. You make a really good point. If you bring a team up from the Championship, your squad in the Championship isn't prepared, isn't good enough for the Premier League.
And it won't be the same at the start of next season.
Extraordinary story to finish tonight. Patrice Evra, former Manchester United left-back, is making his professional MMA debut. He apparently wants to fight Luis Suarez, who was banned for racially abusing him during a game in 2011. Patrice Evra.
Yeah.
MMA.
40 years old, and he's making...
Nothing wrong with being 40.
Making his debut in the PFL, which is the Professional Fighters League, an attempted sort of rival to the UFC.
Yeah.
He's supposedly been doing combat sort of training for 10 years, and he's going to make his debut in Paris on May 23rd. That opponent won't be Luis Suarez, but on TalkSport we had James Fruin, who's the managing director of the PFL, who said that he desperately wants to fight Luis Suarez and settle things on the pitch. They had a famous rivalry, you know, all this argy-bargy, refusing to shake hands, getting each other's faces. And he says he wants to fight Luis Suarez.
So I'm just thinking of other footballers who'd like to fight each other. John Terry and Wayne Bridge. That would be interesting. Let's not get into that.
No, let's not. I imagine lots of footballers would like to fight Joey Barton, and I imagine Joey Barton would like to fight pretty much anyone.
Joey Barton would probably fight himself. Can I just go back to what you said about Leeds? Steven Gerrard. Are you winding me up?
There's been rumours. Yes, he's out of work
for Leeds.
It would. I think his recent record shows that. Yeah.
I think also very quickly Frank Lampard doing a great job at Coventry. Maybe that proves there's a level. I don't know. Maybe you can be a superstar footballer but not a manager. But I'd love Mourinho at Leeds. I think it will be absolute box office. Max, amazing. Really appreciate it. Call it tonight. Barcelona winning then against Inter.
I'm going to say 3-0.
Good man. Thank you. Almost 6 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Thank you to Max Scott. Enjoy the football tonight. Is it on TalkSport?
It is live on TalkSport.
Lovely. News at 6 is on the way, and more of your calls, 0344 499 1000, and your text, 87222. Start your message with the news. Start your message... You know what I'm saying.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back, final hour of Drive for Wednesday. We're live across the UK. Thanks for tuning in. JK till 7. Kev O'Sullivan in his short sleeve shirt on from 7 o'clock. Loads to talk about in this hour. We'll do still a little bit of that light-hearted stuff. What's the most outrageous health and safety story or moment you've experienced? 87 222. Start your message with the word talk. Can I just say, the best thing about Jim from Stompting, I hope that's right, or Stompting in West Sussex, is he's called Jim Doubtfire. Mr. Doubtfire, dear. Jez, this show is such a great end to my working day. I fit kitchens, and a while back I unwrapped a stainless steel sink, and there was a sticky warning label over the hole where the plug or strainer attachment went. It read, warning, sharp edges. I cut my hand quite badly trying to remove the overly sticky warning label. It's a mad, mad world. Phil says, Jezra, I used to be a firefighter in the London Fire Brigade. When I started in the early 90s, part of our morning day shift routine was making a list of light bulbs and fluorescent tubes that weren't working and replacing them. After a few years, they stopped us from performing that task as we weren't trained to stand on a ladder. This is a firefighter, I'd like to point that out. The light bulb changing chore was done by a contractor who, according to the bloke who turned up to do it, was charging £110 a bulb. And guess who was paying? Yes, the British Police. Oh, hello. Was on a bus to work from Maidstone. I don't know who this is from, one of those anonymous ones. When we got to West Malling, the bus driver came out of her seat, went to the stairs and then said, sorry, you're all going to have to get off the bus. There's a banana skin on the stairs and we're concerned that people are going to fall over. Jesus, Andy's in Thatcham. I worked at a government site and on the door of the shower cubicle, a sign simply said, shower, floor may be wet and it could be a hazardous slippy sense for you all. Unbelievable. Finally, I served 25 years as a police officer, says Charles in Midlothian. Good to hear from you, Charles. There has always been a section who see taking down another police officer as a quick way to make a name and thus guarantee promotion. Thank you for that. Loads of you. Keep those texts coming. Bit of fun. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. But I've told you before about Talk Drive. Certainly it's light and shade. This just in some breaking news. The King has spoken about his cancer diagnosis. He described it as daunting and at times frightening, but says that the darkest moments of my illness can be illuminated by the greatest compassion, as he hailed health heroes. Charles, who has been treated for cancer every week for more than a year, penned an optimistic message saying that his cancer diagnosis need never mean facing the future without hope and support. I'm not going to get into my thoughts on whether that's behind that. That's our king. I think it's very interesting that he's spoken out. That will be deemed for many as helpful and honest and open and transparent. Others will say, oh, why is he doing it? Let's just take it for what it is. The King saying it's been daunting, it's been at times frightening, but the greatest thing for him as our king has been the compassion that people have shown to him. We'll keep you updated on that story. 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about. I want to take a call quickly. Earlier we were talking about prisons and how literally, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but the prison in Manchester with that revolting Manchester Arena terrorist Hasham Abidi was allowed a job in the kitchen, and a few weeks ago attacked 3 guards with hot waters and knives, and they thought, well, that's perhaps not a good idea. Well, it's happened again. Violence has erupted at the same jail in the last couple of days. 8 lags, it says here, I'm reading it, said to be mainly Muslims, used weights to attack other inmates at a gym at HMP Frankland in Manchester. What's come from this is that the prison service is bracing itself for further Islamist-inspired attacks in prisons this summer after the assault on those 3 guards. They say there is a real concern amongst the prison officer fraternity that extremists are seeking to exploit overcrowding in the prison service. Can we try and see if we can get Vanessa or somebody on? I'd be quite interested from the prison service, because I think that's a really interesting thing to say, frighteningly interesting. We're joined on the line, actually, a call on this. Stuart's in Nottingham. Stuart, you're on Talk Drive. What you got for me, kiddo?
Hiya, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. What you got?
Great. Right then, I'm a prison officer from days gone by. It's 25 years service. And I was given the opportunity, as was a lot of experienced prison officers at the time, 2013, to jump ship, if you like, because we were too expensive and the terms and conditions were too good. As a result, we knew what would happen, i.e. that they'd employ fresh young staff, no experience to guide them. Today, I've been at my local hospital and saw this person walking out of the hospital resembling Terry Butcher, headband around his head. Anyway, it turns out he's a prison officer. Turns out that he's been jumped today on the landings by a prisoner and stabbed in the head several times with porcelain from the sink from his cell. I'm so grateful I got out of that environment, but I just don't think there's enough awareness out there to say how much danger prison officers really are in. Jeremy, let me put this to you, please. On a landing, I'm not on about a wing, most wings have 3 or 4 landings. On a landing with 120 prisoners, all out, in a Category C prison, how many, Category C should be prisoners who can be trusted and not do, this happened today in a Category C prison today, how many prison officers on a landing with 120 prisoners, all out? How many? Tell me, please.
I'm going to say, sadly, it should probably be about 10, and it's probably about 3.
3, bang on 3. Jeremy, 1 to 40.
It's ridiculous.
1 to 40.
How does that
You go down to your local shops tonight. Jeremy, and there's a dozen kids there. None of them ever been in trouble, but you can have your wits about you. You're on a landing tonight, and there's 3 of you. And
it's hardly surprising to me, Stuart, in all honesty, that anybody, and I'm not being disrespectful when I say this, anybody wants to be a prison officer because of the fear and the lack of, you know, just control and support that they're getting. I mean, you're right, you got out of it at the right time. No wonder they find it difficult to recruit, eh?
Exactly that. And when I joined in 1988, we had, bear in mind, back in 88, the austere system we had then, cons were banged up for 22.5 hours a day, 1 hour exercise, came out of the cells 3 times a day to go and collect the meals for 10 minutes. 22.5 hours bang up. We had 17 officers, Jeremy, down to 3 now, and they're open for 11 hours a day.
Unbelievable. Listen, it's good to have you, Stu, good to hear you, mate, and good to have you on supporting a bunch of people who do an incredible job, and increasingly, it seems, with absolutely no support. Listen, sorry, there's so much going on. 0344 499 1000. We're going to do more on the King, actually, after the break. Royal editor Robert Jobson, so we can get him to join us. Quickly, though, Deputy Editor of Spike, Fraser Myers. Good evening. Welcome to Talk Drive, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Pleasure. I just want to start with the main news story of the day because it just sends most of our audience and me into a fit of madness. Sergeant Martin Blake, the armed police officer who shot dead Chris Cabber in Streatham in September 2022. And for the first 24 hours, there was much, anger, and there were people on the streets. This is a killing of a young black man. This tells you absolutely everything about the police. This is outrageous. Then it transpires that Chris Cabber was, in fact, a violent gangster who discharged a weapon in a nightclub the night before, chased somebody out to kill them, and beaten up repeatedly his pregnant girlfriend, and was a nasty piece of work. We're not condoning that somebody was killed, but actually he was driving a car at 60 miles an hour towards Sergeant Martin Blake and his colleagues and could have killed them. So Martin Blake, a highly trained officer, did what he believed was right. Not only was he ostracised and outed, he was put on a murder charge, and he went to trial and he won. In fact, we found out earlier, Fraser, that so appalled were the jury by the fact that it was even brought by the CPS and the IOPC who had been involved, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, that they wrote to the judge and said how appalling it was. So he gets off, quite rightly, tries to rebuild his life, and today the the IOPC, that ridiculous body, again, are now going to investigate him again for gross misconduct and could fire him. Why would anybody join the firearms unit? Why would this bloke not just go to the biggest bidder and tell the world what a bunch of whatevers his bosses are? This is outrageous. We always talk about other people. Let's talk about Martin Blake doing his job, completely destroyed.
Well, we saw the reaction from other firearms officers when, Martin Blake was initially charged with murder. They quite rightly put down their guns and said, if we're expected to put ourselves in danger and we don't have any backing from the state, why should we bother? And obviously, look, police officers shouldn't be allowed to kill people with impunity. It's right that there are investigations when these things happen, but clearly this was not a example of someone behaving recklessly, not an example of someone seeking to murder Chris Cabot, as he was actually charged with, which is extraordinary. And having gone through that trial, it's hard to see what yet another investigation or another sort of hearing is going to achieve.
Apart from destroying still further a man's life who's had to move home, whose family have been targeted, who has been ostracised and yet has done nothing more than try and protect the British people under the auspices of his job. I think it's utterly disgusting. I honestly think it's disgusting. Dreadful.
And let's be clear that the interest around this trial is entirely political. It's because, as you were alluding to earlier, people jumped on this case as if Chris Cabot were basically the British George Floyd, as if it was going to be our sort of Black Lives Matter moment.
Interesting.
Well before they knew the facts, well before there was a lot of reporting restrictions at the time, so we couldn't. Those kind of wild claims couldn't actually be countered with the facts, unfortunately, because Martin Blake had been charged. So, to see this again and to even see the IPC essentially say that this will give reassurance to black communities, that to me, raises concerns. Well, what has it got to do with that? He hasn't done anything wrong. The jury essentially showed that. Why would it affect them? We do not live in a country where people are being routinely killed by the police, let alone murdered by the police. We do not live in a country where people are being at risk of losing their lives as a result of reckless police officers. It's an imported political problem, and unfortunately, yes, a real man, a real person who is doing his duty is paying the price for this, and he's just caught in the middle of this bizarre culture war.
Well, bizarre culture war or not, I think it's a particularly depressing way to treat somebody who's doing his job. And I think it also, we had the point made earlier, I don't know who it was, maybe it was Peter Carboll, that says, how many people who are armed policemen or women are now going to wait for a second before they discharge their weapon, considering what the alternatives, not the alternatives, but actually what the consequences might be of them doing what they're trained to do? I think it's frightening. Let's talk about prisons as well with you, Spiked. Have so much good stuff written, and it's just nice to have you on. But again today, I make no apology for this. That Manchester Arena terrorist, Hasheen Abedi, who attacked 3 guards some weeks ago in HMP Franklin. This is the guy who, was part of the Manchester terrorist arena plot. He was allowed to get a job in a kitchen where there were knives and hot water. All surprise, surprise, he attacked some guards. Over the weekend, a bit more violence. 8 prisoners, said to be mainly Muslims, using weights to attack other inmates in the gym. It was quelled, but it's led to the prison service today saying, and this is really worrying, further Islamist-inspired attacks in prison this summer are a very real concern. We believe extremists are seeking to exploit the overcrowding crisis in prisons. So we've got police officers on the streets, my friend, too scared to do their jobs. And we're now faced with prisons being run by different groups because there are so few prison officers because they get no support. You just heard a guy on the show saying that in his day, 120 man wing, there would have been 17 officers. Now there's 3. They've got no hope, have they?
Yeah, there's the staffing crisis and then there's the cultural crisis. So the staffing crisis is extraordinary. In 1990, around the time of the Strangeways prison riots, we had about 20,000 prison staff for England and Wales. Back then, we had a prison population of about 45,000. Now we have a prison population edging up towards 90,000, and we have 18,000 prison staff.
Sorry, we've got double the prisoners and half the staff.
Double the prisoners and actually less than half the staff. So you can imagine that that is fertile ground for riots, for prisoners to run amok. But then there's also the cultural problem. We are simply far, far too soft on all things Islamist. People in positions of power are so terrified of appearing racist for raising concerns about this issue. I mean, it was in The Sun recently, a junior prison officer talked about how many Islamist gangs have been able to get around drug searches by saying, they don't want to sniff a dog near them for religious reasons. So, that's just one example of we're sort of bending to their will here. Someone like Hasham Abedi, the crimes he committed, the fact that he wasn't in the most secure prison
should have been in Belmarsh in solitary. He killed innocent people. This is, Fraser, don't get me wrong, I go and have my life, but I do sit here and I think to myself, it seems, I said it earlier on, almost every fabric of what I was brought up to believe was right and proper, like a strong police. We were scared of the police. Take you home, tell your mum, clip you around the ear roll. Strong borders, a military you looked up to. We've got crime on the streets. We've got a police force too scared to do anything. When they do, they're probably going to be, taken and put in trouble, like Martin Blake. We seem to make excuses for victims. We'll imprison somebody, Lucy Connolly, for 31 months for hurty words. I don't condone the words before the do-gooders get on the phone. But we'll make excuses for other people. We'll make excuses for violent terrorists and thugs and pretend that it matters that they need... All of this stuff, where it is almost beginning to feel like the breakdown of much of what I believe is normal. Does that make sense to you?
I think there's certainly a huge divide between how, the people who run society, how they think things should be run, what they think is important, who they feel sorry for, versus what the vast majority of people think. Ordinary people understand that there's a difference between words and violence, that violence needs to be cracked down on severely, and that words, no matter how horrible, should not be criminalised. So, I think
you can educate with words. I mean, that woman, Lucy Connolly, is a prime example. What she said was completely unacceptable, but I would have sent her to a Muslim community to spend time with Muslim leaders, good Muslim people, and learn the error of what she said and how destructive and violently wrong it was. But no. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to jail her. But then, if you've mass murdered people, I mean, look, this is what does it for me. Victims are outraged today after it emerged that a notorious Rotherham rapist gang member who tried to escape justice by fleeing to Pakistan got given 25 years, found guilty of 15 charges of raping kids. OK, kids. Is going to be let out early to an open jail for his mental health because we think it's a good thing. What the hell does that say? What about the victims? It's appalling.
Lucy Connolly isn't being given any kind of day release, to put that in contrast. She's not allowed to see her family, even though, murderers in a similar position would be allowed to. There is clearly, I think, the word two-tier justice is thrown around a lot, but I think people know that it exists. I think people know that, the state is wary of cracking down on Islamists. It's much more interested in cracking down on people it sees as critics of the current, the way things are, not critics of the Labour Party, but simply critics of how the state is organised. And that's a really big problem. It's creating a lot of distrust. People don't feel that the justice system serves them or serves their values. And, someone will have to change it. I don't see how it can last like this.
I don't see how it can last. Just to finish, slightly more light-hearted, there's a story today where a man who was renting a flat off a landlord was told that his fish tank was a serious health and safety risk, and as such, he had to leave. It was 2 foot deep. We asked some of the most mad, health and... I don't know if you've got one, but this is great from Terry, who says, I went to a naturist camp in Lincolnshire once, and I swear, he said, on my life, there was a sign saying, please beware of the prickly bushes, which is actually it's literally quite worrying. Any health and safety madness in the world of Fraser Myers and Spiked?
Well, we don't really do big health and safety here. I mean, it's only an office, but sometimes it's funny how wokeness actually collides with health and safety. So, they've got those rainbow crossings that they put out a lot, where zebra crosses are painted in rainbow colours.
Yes, trains, zebra crossings, zebras on children's television, yes.
But painting them in rainbow colours is actually a disaster for blind people, and it confuses police horses. So you have a situation where wokeness collides with people's actual safety. And it's you know, which should take priority? Celebrating.
Mate, let me read you two. I'm completely with you. Phil in Portsmouth. These are genuine stories of madness, ladies and gentlemen. He says health and safety gone mad. I work in an office behind a desk, and we literally got an email recently. We have to wear steel toe-cap shoes in case we drop a pencil or something on our feet. Somebody will have sent that bloody email. This is the one of the day, though. Robert, I've been a chef all my life. During the last few years, I've obviously bought several professional knives, and they literally every time on a label say, caution, sharp. I mean, it's just like, what do they think is wrong? Oh, my God. Anyway, listen, Fraser, really good to have you on, mate. Really, really appreciate it. Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked, fantastic organisation. Thank you to him. 6:23. We had that statement from the King about his cancer. Robert Jobson, the Royal Editor, is next on Talk Drive.
Defence of murder, it requires you to have malice aforethought, yes. You know, that you've actually planned, thought about what you're doing. Sergeant Blake had a split second to make a decision. And as you've seen, a car is more deadly sometimes than a gun. And I just think the public will see this once again as the police being under attack when the police get rightly criticised about things, about not failing enough, not solving enough crime, not being on patrol enough. But here we are, dedicated officers who were keeping Londoners safe.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
25, just before the break, we told you that the King had released a message. Could you put that back up for me, please, Ry? Because it's off the screen. Robert Jobson is our Royal Editor. Robert, welcome to Talk Drive. How are you?
Very good, mate. Very good.
Oh, you gave me paper, yeah. I just want to read this out. This is described as a personal message to fellow cancer patients. He speaks of daunting and at times frightening experiences. In a heartfelt message at the Buckingham Palace reception for cancer charities, he spoke about becoming a cancer statistic, referencing the 1,000 new cases in the UK every single day. Yeah. He said, living with cancer had shown that the darkest moments of illness can be illuminated by the greatest compassion. It didn't update on his progress, but it said he is continuing in a positive direction. Now, just wanted to ask you, because we go back a long way, you know I'm an ardent royalist. One of the things about a transparent democracy, Robert, is that it says, I think, takes people with them, can open up taboo subjects that were never talked about. And he, of course, has always been somebody who advocates that. Is there more to this, in your mind?
I think the words that struck me were living with cancer. I think that the reality is that's exactly what he's had to do over the last year. He's still on chemotherapy. The sources are saying yes, he's getting better. Well, okay, we'll have to take their word for it. There's a lot of rumours and speculation about what type of cancer he has, but there doesn't seem to be any indication that he's coming off the chemotherapy. Got a big weekend coming ahead with the 80th anniversary of VE Day, where he's going to be very present and very central to those commemorations. And I think he probably wants to sort of give not necessarily an update, but just give an indication of thanks to the people that supported him.
You know what I think of the monarchy. It just worries me.
Yeah, but he's living with cancer. That was an expression that was used not necessarily to him, but he's talking about people living with it, and you can do so. But to do that, you've got to live with that chemotherapy, and which is incredibly draining. It's effectively is poisoning your system.
Yep.
And we have to be. There is no indication of when this is going to end. So, I think he's being positive. I think the people around him have been being positive, but equally, one has to be realistic. Our current head of state had been on chemotherapy, treated for a cancer that's not been identified for over a year. If that was an elected president, there'll be a lot of people sort of saying, "So is he up to the job?" etc. No question about that. We saw all that with Joe Biden's mental frailties, people questioning that. So, I think the King is doing a terrific job. He's out there in doing the work that he has to do. But there's some doubts here. There's no doubt about that.
I think for me as well, brought up in it, and you know that, I see a man who, and I've been really supportive of him. I used to say, if he said nothing, they'd say he's a waste of space, he doesn't do anything, and if he does say something, he's interfering. He waited 70+ years for his destiny, and his destiny was only fulfilled when his dear mother died. I think I'm like you. I love the royal family, but it concerns me this has been going on a year. This might just be an innocent phrase to a bunch of people, but it smacks of more to that than me. And I just hope it isn't. I just hope he isn't iller than he is either letting on or we are being told about. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, we're not being told. The bottom line there, Jeremy, is we're not being told exactly what his cancer diagnosis is. I've got a fair idea what I think it is.
Are you prepared to say on air?
I can't say on air, but
okay.
I know. Because I think it would be wrong if he's choosing to maintain.
No, absolutely.
But at the end of the day, it's the cancer. Whatever cancer he has got, he's been treated with it with the chemotherapy and all other areas for over a year. Now that's a long period of time, and there's also no indication as to when this cancer treatment, this chemotherapy, will be coming to an end.
How old is he, Robert?
In November, he'll be 77.
I had testicular cancer when I was 45. I had chemo for 6 weeks and it knocked me out for 2 years. So bear in mind this guy is 30 years older and he has had chemo, you're right, for a year and continues to staunchly do his job. I have nothing but respect for him. I
agree with you. And I think actually he's doing a terrific job. He's actually doing the job. And we've got to remember in the last, say, 10 years of Her Majesty's reign, he was doing a lot of the, she was doing all the boxes and talking to the Prime Ministers and had the key role. Of course she did. That's what she did till the very end. But, some of the hard lifting, he was doing a lot of the international travel, the soft power diplomacy, he was carrying that out. And was, it was almost like not a dual monarchy, but he was doing the job effectively towards the end. But I think in this particular instance, he is, he's made this statement because he's got a lot of people at the reception tonight at the palace to do with the cancer charity. So, and he is doing it in this way, issuing statements ahead of these big receptions. But the point is, he's been being treated with chemotherapy with no clear statement of when this is going to end for the last over a year.
And you contrast that with the Princess of Wales, who, of course, that was a shock almost at the same time. But there was very much that statement from her that, I'm in remission and I'm at that point now and I've got to make sure I look after myself. You're right. There hasn't been... That statement's fine, but there hasn't really been a progress report, has there? So it's just the same thing.
I don't think there will, Jeremy. I don't think there will be. But what I do think is that he's giving in that statement. If you're like me, reading these things for over many years, I think the words, the living with cancer is what he's sort of what he's getting across here. He's talking about people living with it and how you can, wake up and smell the roses, see the good side of humanity, and all these sort of things that he's suggesting that, this may be the way he has got to continue. He is living with.
He also
disease.
quoted Dame Deborah James, which jumped out at me. Of course, that amazing lady who died of bowel cancer in 2022. He quotes, and whose parents are actually guests at that reception tonight. He quotes her, who said, "Have no regrets and always have rebellious hope." I'm not building into this, neither are you. I just think it's sad.
No,
I think it's sad that the guy's ill. I know it sounds stupid, and there would be anti-monarchists going, "So what is the king?" I just think it's very sad that he waited all his life and he's ill. That's what I think. But the duty side of it.
It's coming up, Jeremy, 3 years since. It's 3 years in September, isn't it, that he became king? Let's hope that the treatment continues. He reaches 5 years and beyond. But the reality is, this is a man who's living with a disease that kills, and that is where we are.
Robert, really good to have you on, mate. We'll obviously follow this story through and appreciate you jumping on really quickly. Royal Editor Robert Jobson there. This on the back of the King sending a personal message in the last hour to fellow cancer patients, speaking of the daunting and at times frightening experience for cancer sufferers and their loved ones. In a heartfelt message to guests at a BP reception tonight for cancer charities, the King spoke about becoming a cancer statistic and told us there are 1,000 new cases of cancer recorded every day in the UK. He said his experience of living with cancer had shown that the darkest moments of illness can be illuminated by the greatest compassion. There was no update as to the progress of his own cancer treatment, but Royal Editor Robert Jobson saying there to us, I think very accurately, the King, 76, has been living and having chemotherapy every day, well, not every day, but bi-daily, twice daily, whatever, twice weekly, for a year. But as one among those statistics myself, said the King, I can vouch for the fact that it can also be an experience that brings into sharp focus the very best of humanity. He praised the community of care of those who helped cancer patients for their humanity as well as their expertise. Very interesting, very interesting. Whether you're a royalist or you're not, I made the point then, love your thoughts on it. Here's a man who waited all his life for his destiny. I hope his illness stabilises or is improving. We'll let you know any more news that we have. This is Talk Drive, 25 to 7.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
23 minutes to 7. Kev here at 7 o'clock. Petrie from 10. That breaking news, the King sending a personal message to fellow cancer patients. More on that throughout the evening. People will build into that. It is a big charity night at Buckingham Palace. 1,000 different charities represented. And talk of him trying to be transparent and you know, show the people that he's there and he's fighting. But as Robert Jobson just said, he's a 76-year-old man who's been having chemotherapy for a year. And in that statement, and we do pull them to bits, Robert Jobson doing it better than anybody, saying, he said, learning to live with cancer. Make of that what you will, but he is our king and he's done a fantastic job in the last 3 years. 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about. Bringing on, here's a man who knows so much about everything. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Good evening, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Jeremy. How are you doing?
I'm all right. So we've talked about the King. Before we talk about Chris Cabba and that poor sergeant, let's talk about the madness. It's going to start slightly light-hearted, light and shade. You won't know this. I'm going to completely and utterly sabotage what you thought I was going to talk about. What's the most ridiculous health and safety warning you ever heard, seen or experienced? Can you think?
Oh, off the top of my head? Oh, good Lord.
Claire in Ascot, while you think, just because this has gone like anything today. Ridiculous health and safety story. I was in an NHS urgent care waiting room the other day and there were 2 little children throwing paper aeroplanes about. They were escorted out by an angry receptionist who said it was a danger to people. Paper aeroplanes! Jezza, there needs to be a health and safety warning if Kevin O'Sullivan is going to be on wearing a short-sleeve shirt. My goodness, what year did they come back in? Says David in the Cotswolds. I totally agree. But this all came about because a bloke who rented a flat off a landlord was told that he was a safety risk because he had a fish tank with water in the bottom and they said somebody could have drowned from it. Oh, get this, Sally Slinger, that's her name. She says, at my work, we aren't allowed to sit down because we weren't allowed to sit down on new chairs until they'd been risk assessed.
Oh, my word. Where on earth... where is this? Where does she work? That's insane.
Oh, hold on, there's another one. Regarding health and safety, the health and safety advisor for our company wanted us to supply a face mask and goggles in the staff toilets for and when people used air freshener after somebody had a poo. Oh, my God. I've never seen Benedict Spence speechless. I honestly... Unbelievable, but I had to get that in. Honestly,
this reinforces my, complete avoidance for wanting to ever be in any workplace ever. Is what I would say. This completely confirms all of my suspicions that you all work in completely insane environments and you ought to get outside.
It's weird, isn't it? I have to say that I sort of always say on this show, why do people want to work from home? One needs to meet people and mix with people. I mean, it happened to me at News. I've told you the News UK the other day. I was in a lift with a woman and it got down to the ground floor and I said, after you, and she went, why? Because I'm a woman. I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, I think I'd rather be at home. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, yeah. Let's move on. There's lots to talk about. You're very flexible. I know that. I've been angry all afternoon about Sergeant Martin Blake. When Chris Cabba was killed by Sergeant Martin Blake, the policeman who shot dead Chris Cabba in Streatham in September 2022. For a couple of days, there were protests, there were people out on the street. This was supposed to be the Black Lives Matter moment in the United Kingdom. Transpires that Chris Cabba was nothing more than a murdering, violent gangster who discharged a weapon in a nightclub, chased people, beaten up his pregnant girlfriend, and was a very, very nasty piece of work, and was driving his vehicle at speed towards Martin Blake and his family. Martin Blake went through hell. He was actually put on trial for murder. Fellow police officers saying, we're putting our weapons down. This is ludicrous. He went through the whole thing. I don't know if you were listening earlier, you probably weren't, but not only was it only 3 hours, which is ridiculously small in a murder trial, the jury wrote a letter to the judge. Did you know about this? In which they said, basically, the Crown Prosecution Service was fundamentally wrong and that the IPOC, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, was culpable. Today, having survived that, changed appearance, moved house, had all sorts of whatever, the IOPC are doing a review and inquiry into him and could sack him for gross misconduct. If Donald Trump was in charge, the IOPC would be disbanded tonight. What an absolute insult and a joke, Benedict Spence.
The IOPC they've said this themselves, that the bar for them to launch an investigation is very low and that's written up in law. And what that is them doing is saying, look, you guys might not like this, but we answer to politicians, and ultimately we're not the ones who, write these laws. It ultimately comes down from on top. So you can sort of see them trying to pass the buck ever so slightly there. But I do also think they have a point, which is that we hold our police officers to an incredibly high standard. Like, I can't think of another country, actually, that holds their police officers and also members of their armed forces to the standards that we do. And you can see that in the way that we've had thousands of incidents of armed response units being called out over the last couple of decades. And the number of times that they've actually fired their weapon, you can almost count on two hands. And when they do, it's usually either a violent criminal in the act of doing something violent, or a terrorist in the act of doing something violent. Yeah. They're actually very good at what they do. However, because we hold our officers to such high standards, if you then allow a culture, a grievance culture, to sort of foment, and this has been imported from the United States, let's be very clear, where they do have problems around police officers shooting people fairly frequently. If you import that and you basically say the culture here is the same as it is in the US, and we need to go after police officers who discharge their weapons the same way, you'll have bad faith actors exploiting those very low bars to make sure that police officers are effectively hounded, because it is a political campaign. It's a political.
Well, then that's however, I mean, it's so disgusting, because as Blexley said earlier, right, and this is really relevant. What does that say to the policemen and women marksmen the next time they're thinking of pulling the trigger? And if he hadn't pulled the trigger, would Chris Cabber have mowed down 3 innocent police officers? It's always one way, but for this guy to go through this again, I mean, I hope he leaves the police and sells his... I think it's absolutely outrageous, Benedict.
It is outrageous, and if I were a firearms officer, I wouldn't want to carry on with this, because, as you say, what does this say? It says that there's absolutely no cover for you in this role. And do you remember, of course, the previous time we had something similar to this with Mark Duggan, and there was massive sort of upheaval as a result of that as well, and it turned out that he wasn't a very nice individual either. And there's always this immediate sort of police brutality, it's racism, trigger-happy cops, and then you think, how many people have been shot in this country? 11, 12, or something like that?
Peter also said after Duggan and the one before whose name evades me, but actually that's the problem, that the IOPC are desperate, under their remit, which is, yes, political, but they could see it differently, desperate, absolutely desperate to nail, if you like, a police officer, male or female, and that's the issue. I just find it frightening, mate. And on the back of that today, which sort of in itself talks, I think, so much sense about how mad everything seems to be, we got the prison thing. I mean, we had the story of Hasham Abedi, that Manchester arena terrorist who was allowed at HMP Franklin in Manchester to work in the kitchen, and he got hot water and knives, and everybody said, oh, he attacked people. Yeah, of course he did. 8 more lags, said to be mainly Muslims, causing trouble over the weekend, using weights to attack other inmates. It was controlled, but it's led to the prison service, the police, saying that we are braced for further Islamist-inspired attacks in prisons this summer. There is now a real concern amongst prison officers, Benedict, that extremists are seeking to exploit the overcrowding crisis in prisons. I had a call on from an ex-prison officer who said when he was there, 120 prisoners, 18 guards. Today, 180 prisoners, 3 guards. Can't work.
Yeah. Saying that it's the overcrowding that's the issue is actually passing the buck. And overcrowding is a major issue, and we can blame the Conservative government for that. But actually, radicalisation inside British prisons has been going on for decades, actually. And it operates, again, not to talk about the United States too much, but it's that classic kind of identitarian prison gang thing. But the part of the problem here is people are far too fastidious about tackling different ethnic groups, different religious groups, when they operate effectively as gangs, because they don't want to be accused, as usual, of insulting religious or cultural sensitivities. So that's why this is allowed to carry on going. The number of people who convert or are forced to convert in prison in order to not end up being victimized by other prisoners. That is something that I think more members of the public should be made aware of, the fact that this is how these prisons run. They are able to behave this way partly because there aren't enough prison staff, and those that are there do not want to run the risk of being accused of being racist.
But this is, I'm so glad we're on this. I know it's serious and we go light to shade. This is where I have an issue. they're too... Yeah, you're right. There aren't enough, and who would want to get a job in the prison service anyway? I have great sympathy for them. But the economy... Not the economy, that's written over there. The fact of the matter is this. What you're saying is policing, sentencing, justice in its entirety now is not consistent because certain factions would worry that people might rise up and be unhappy. Let me give you the other thing, which falls nicely into that. Total outrage today after one of the Rotherham grooming gang rapists given 25 years after being found guilty of 15 charges, including rape and abduction. This is really important. Bashrat Hussain tried to flee to Pakistan, eventually was found guilty of 15 cases of raping teenage girls. OK, just get that in, not your mind, the people out there. Gets 25 years, right? And it's emerged today that the Home Office is considering freeing him to an open prison, which means you just have to be there at night, you can do whatever, and yet languishing in a jail, unable to see her family or her daughter, is Lucy Connolly, who wrote some nasty words. I despair. I despair of this country increasingly.
Honestly, I mean, every single person who is implicated in the grooming gang things, they shouldn't be in this country. And if there is no way of getting them out of this country, they should never be considered fit to be released from prison. I'm sorry, the insanity that I say we, not we, actually not we, not me, no. Not you, nobody listening to this, but politicians and experts in the civil service have decided what is proportional, what is fair, what we should do on the grounds of human rights legislation is in fact, a violation of every law on this earth, frankly. Everybody understands that the grooming and abuse of young girls is one of the most heinous crimes you can do, and they all know why it's done, and we also know why it is that it hasn't been targeted properly. It's disgusting, frankly, that we're even considering releasing any of these
and also, actually, just as my brain works, which isn't in the normal way to other people, one of the reasons our government will not have an independent, massive national inquiry, and I don't care if this upsets people, is because they too are concerned about the division it might cause to their vote in constituencies where Muslim votes have impacted on Labour support. I'm not being racist, that is a fact, right? An absolute fact. When the police came out in Rotherham, Benedict, and went, we've slowed it down a bit because we didn't want to create racial tension. If I'm the father of a girl that's been raped, I don't care about the colour of the skin of the perpetrator. That piece of crap needs to rot in hell for all eternity. I don't understand it. I genuinely don't understand it.
There's a very interesting political theorist called Samo Berger, who's based in the United States, and he was talking about the grooming gang scandal yesterday on Twitter. And what he said that I thought was rather interesting was, if the United States was as disgusted as they often claim to be about this sort of thing, and if the US was a true friend to the UK, they'd actually consider putting sanctions on any politician who they know are actually involved in complicity or covering up or not prosecuting this properly. They said if this was any other country, the United States would look very seriously at actually punishing the people. And it doesn't matter that it might cause, a little bit of unrest. The Trump administration doesn't seem to mind about upsetting its allies. Why not, frankly? I think that that's an entirely agreeable solution. Actually, if other countries are disgusted by this, why wouldn't they say to our own politicians, we're going to punish you for this sort of thing because it's not acceptable?
Completely agree. Wish we had more time. Great as ever. Really appreciate your time. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Talk Drive. What is it, 10 to 7 already?
think particularly in the high security prisons, the category A jails like Frankland and Belmarsh, is that the Islamist prisoners in some parts of those jails have sort of in effect taken control of wings, and there is a large influx as well of Muslim prisoners who are in some cases sort of coerced or intimidated into joining these gangs, and it's having a serious effect, I think, on order and control.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks for your messages today. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. And before I forget, thank you very much indeed to the team. Harry Potter in for Journey, doing a fantastic job. James Ryan, thank you very much indeed. Mozzie, thank you very much indeed. And can I give a special mention to Amy today, who's been utterly fantastic on the buttons. Sorry. Rachel, hello. Rachel says, cheers, I'm joking. I really hope this police officer, this is Martin Blake, who's been done again by the AOPC, dreadful. He's able to make a fortune and build a wonderful life for his wife and family. This situation absolutely stinks. Couldn't agree more. Donna in Birmingham points out something that Sam, who's on the buttons next, he's never made a mistake. Hi, Jezza. Did you know that every time a Pope has died, an English team wins the Champions League? Did we know that? It's true. Donna in Birmingham. Paul's in Hartlepool. I spent over 20 years in the Royal Navy, another 20 years as a police officer trying to protect the citizens of this country. What a waste of time. This dreadful government are destroying my country. I genuinely believe that Starmer and his cohort hate the United Kingdom. And by the way, as a former firearms officer, all armed officers should hand in their tickets. The IOPC are the enemy of the police force in this country. Dan, going back to the health and safety madness, ready for this, Ames? My partner has just come home and told me, because she was listening, she's not allowed to climb a ladder at work because she hasn't got a ladder certificate. I've got to have a ladder certificate to climb that ladder. And a genuine one here as well from Laura Donovan. Laura, thank you for this. On the back of the King's announcement earlier about his cancer diagnosis, he talked about living with cancer. She said, Jez, having had double breast cancer back in 2010, I totally understand the worry. As you know, with your own remission, the worry of cancer coming back is always in the back of your mind. As with me, you, King Charles, and all of those who are going through the treatment or in remission, the worry of cancer returning is always there and never goes away. Good point, Laura, and thank you for making it talk. 87222, if you want to send a message in the next 5 minutes. We're going to East Sussex. Alex, you're on Talk Drive. What you got? Very quickly, my friend.
Yeah, Jeremy, very quickly. Thanks very much. Great common sense. About 40 years ago, before I did went into my proper career, which is an airline pilot, I did work for the police and I was a firearms officer in my early 20s. And whenever we had to go and do our reclassifications, we had to write out what the law was that covers when you can lawfully discharge your gun, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed from what I can see, and thank God it hasn't, because it's actually very simple, it's very broad, it doesn't just affect police officers. It's Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act 1967, and it simply says a person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances in the prevention of crime.
But can I just jump in for a reason, because I'm delighted you've made the call. Reason. The problem is, we're saying to police officers like poor Martin Blake, you made a split-second decision to protect the lives of your fellow police officers against a man who turned out to be a notorious, horrible, nasty gangster, horrible man who discharged weapons and did terrible things to his pregnant girlfriend. You were absolutely right, but you had to go through all of that, including a murder charge. What does that say to police officers in the future? Because now they're being policed by other people who aren't in that position. That's what I think's changed. It's terrible.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Jeremy. And what it comes down to is simply what that piece of law says, which essentially it comes down to what the 12 people in the jury think is reasonable. And others meddling with it is probably political.
Bear in mind this man had to go, right? Bearing in mind that this man had to go in front of a jury on a murder charge, and bearing in mind that his officers, so many officers with those weapons said, I'm not doing this, we're dropping our weapons. What do you think, very quickly, of the IOPC today saying he's got to go in front of another? This is outrageous, man.
No, I think it's completely unnecessary. I think it's a simple case under the Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act, which he seems to have already cleared that hurdle. So I really don't understand it. And in fact, Jeremy, when I was doing that job, one of the concerns we used to have, we thought, well, if you delay firing, let's say people are about to be killed in an airport or something, if you delay your damned because people say you should have fired earlier.
Completely. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Don't think me rude, Alex. We've got to move. Great to have your support in East Sussex. Thank you very much indeed. As a man in a short-sleeve shirt that I've been told is a health and safety risk.
Is it really?
Because your bingo wing arms could
bingo wing?
Well, I've seen it all
they're
going.
not bingo wing. They're skinny is what they are.
How are you, son?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right.
How bad is that Martin Blake thing?
Oh, it's a disgrace.
The IOPC.
Well, they
joke.
hate the police. It's quite clear.
Yeah.
Did you see the statement they put out? Obviously, we have great concern for the family of Chris Carber and the family of Sergeant
Chris
Blake.
Carber,
that was their order.
gangster.
Their concern first was for Chris Carber.
What do you make about the King? What do you make about the King statement?
Cancer has allowed him to see the world in a whole new way.
I think there's more to it.
Maybe.
Living with cancer worried me. I think Robert Jobson made a really interesting point. What you got?
Right, last night we did the story that the Royal Marines were embroiled in a massive row over DEI that's serving soldiers in the Royal Marines. Fear that standards are being dropped in order to recruit the first ever female commandos. 900 women over the years have tried the gruelling induction course. All of them have failed. 26,000 men try it every year, only 400 succeed. It's extremely gruelling and no woman has yet passed. Some serving Marines now fear that standards will be deliberately dropped to get the first women in DEI.